Senator Ellis.
Yeah. So, the thing is, everyone has their opinion, and we all put in bills, and we all think those bills are important. So for someone to say what they think is important and dismiss other bills, it's a great disservice to our big D democracy, and we're supposed to work as much as we can to hear as many of these bills and not, really dismiss them because certain people don't want to deal with them. And so I have a lot of problems with that. And so I really appreciate the debate and all these issues being addressed. So I believe it's time well spent, and I don't believe it's waste of time. Because when Senator Kagan and Senator Washington and I met on Sunday and some SRO, the debate was great. We understood and we agreed, and in 15 minutes we were able to come up with a path forward. And so none of this is a waste of time. It's all great use of time, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The one other, I'm sorry, Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on going back to your earlier comments where you opened up the meeting. So as I understand it, we will focus more on our Senate bills and not House bills in the immediate for this week. Is that, and that goes for both hearings and voting? Is that correct?
Voting for sure. I mean, we owe a responsibility to our colleagues.
Right.
In terms of hearings, tomorrow we have a few Senate bills and some House bills that are already scheduled, and people signed up to testify, so we can't cancel them. But I spoke with councils today, and Thursdays will be pushed back till next week. So I think the next 3 days are most important for crossover. So I want to get as many of the Senate bills addressed, and a few, as I've told you, I've put on hold, like commemorative days, and we're going to have a discussion about commemorative days in weeks and months, I think on Thursday. So we're not going to vote any House bills for a while. We are going to get through the Senate bills, get crossover, take a breath. Then we'll do some House bills, and hopefully we'll have a few days that end early and people can take a walk down to the water. So, I don't want to burn people out. We have 3 more weeks to go.
Right. So, and that's what I was just trying to clarify, that those of us who are still trying to move Senate bills and getting them on voting lists as opposed to the hearings. So thank you for that clarification.
The only other point I want to mention is yesterday we had the Kerwin, it's really not Kerwin, it's Senate Bill 965. It may be that the House moves it first, but when that comes in, that's going to move front and center because we don't have a lot of time for that. So that will be coming forward. You have Senate Bill 965. There will probably be amendments. If you have further questions, you can ask Ms. Goodman or directly to Ms. Heiss. They're the experts. I am not. I have the basic knowledge, and I've been aware of the changes. But we will have a markup session. We're not going to have another hearing. We will have a markup session, so you'll come with amendments. If you have questions, I would encourage you to ask prior in the next few days when you do get a minute to breathe. I would suggest you either check with Stacy and she will answer, or she'll forward it to Rachel if you have questions about the bill. But that will be on a fast track, and we will make time for a markup of that over the next 3 to 6 days. Okay, that being said, we're going to go to list number 27, and Ms. Foxworth or Senator Hester, in terms of the cyber bills, we can take them in whatever order or package makes sense. So we're looking at the second bill down to like the 6th bill or 5th bill, I don't know. So that's where we are.
I think we can take cyber bills together.
I know,
that'll be my
just give us a methodology, something that makes sense here, that's all. Either big picture down to small picture, or some, there are going to be a fair amount of questions for the people who weren't on your work group. just tell us where we should start.
Okay, so we can, I guess, go in numerical order. So we have SB 49 from the work group.
Okay?
All right. So there should have been passed around just kind of an organizational chart, which describes the responsibilities and roles contemplated for each bill, for each kind of method and level of government. State level, county level, and private entities or other. So Senate Bill 49, title is State Government Department of Information Technology and Cybersecurity. The bill, this is on the first page of that organizational chart. The bill expands the responsibilities of the Secretary of Information Technology, which is housed within the Department of Information Technology, and expands that responsibility for them to consult with the Attorney General on a cybersecurity strategy for executive branch agencies and public institutions of higher education. The Secretary of Information Technology is responsible for advising and consulting with legislative and judicial branches of state government. Secretary of Information Technology is also responsible for providing guidance to counties and municipalities and school systems on a consistent cybersecurity strategy. However, the bill explicitly states that there is no mandate that's placed on local agencies. Their role is to facilitate and provide guidance. No opposition was at the hearing, and there is an amendment sponsored by Senator Hester, which removes the requirement for the Secretary of IT to consult with the Attorney General on creating or overseeing this consistent strategy, and replaces the requirement to consult with the Attorney General with the requirement to consult with the Maryland Cybersecurity Council throughout its roles.
What's the takeaway here? What is the bottom line? What does this bill do? And is the consulting with the AG in or is it out? So either Ms. Foxworth or Senator Hester or somebody, I was a little confused by the explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and apologies for being late. I had 3 bills back-to-back in finance. I just wanted a quick chance to say thank you for the opportunity to work with great colleagues. We put in probably 2 or 3 weeks worth of work, and Ms. Foxwell did an amazing job. So thank you all for your hard work. Senate Bill 49 is really the strategy portion of the package. A lot of this is, already going on in practice, but it codifies that DO-IT sets the strategy for the executive agency, and it also provides guidance, although it doesn't mandate that the locals follow it for the locals. So this is the high-level kind of policy, DO-IT's in charge bill. In terms of the Attorney General, this is just an amendment. The Attorney General chairs the Maryland Cybersecurity Commission, and so I called him and I asked him if he wanted to be mentioned directly, and he said, actually the expertise lies with the council and not himself, so he suggested that change.
In front of us. Let's move the bill, and it's been moved and seconded. Any objection to the amendment, which was somewhat recommended by the AG? If no objection, that's adopted. I have one question, and I'm not sure if Senator Hester or Ms. Foxworth can answer it. We've heard over the last year or two that while DO-IT's had responsibility and authority, some agencies have said thank you and they've gone their own way. And so my question is that addressed in this bill? One, is that true? Is that assertion true? And 2, is it addressed in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, DO-IT operates on a fee-for-service model, and so some agencies choose to hire DO-IT for its services and some do not. This bill does say that there is a statewide, standard and strategy and minimum requirements, set out by DO-IT that they have to follow. So it reiterates the intent. There aren't a lot of teeth in this bill, but there will be in subsequent bills.
Discussion on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Senator Riley.
Very much. So thank you very much for assigning me to this committee. I've learned more about cybersecurity in the past 3 weeks than I really wanted to know. No. I thank you for it because I found out we have a couple of experts. Senator Kagan, Senator Hester, Senator Washington, very competent, very great. Senator Simon Ayer was unbelievable, even though he's not officially part of the committee. He added an awful lot. I can just share with you that Senator Hester was the most knowledgeable, led the group, and I am very supportive of all her recommendations. Thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a quick question. So, we'll
New stuff, so people, as much as I talked about us talking a lot of time on Friday, this is new information, so please feel free to ask questions so you're knowledgeable when you cast a vote. Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, appreciate the work of Senator Hester with this leadership. I have a quick question with the consultation with the Attorney General, taking out Attorney General and substitute Maryland Cybersecurity Council. So I saw that the Maryland Cybersecurity Council is chaired by the Attorney General.
That is correct.
Okay, so the Attorney General will still be involved with this as far as, and his people. Is that correct?
It's mostly correct, Senator Ellis. So he chairs the council. There currently are no staff within the Attorney General's office who hold the expertise required to advise on a strategy. So he preferred that to be able to select members of the Cybersecurity Council with appropriate background to advise and counsel on the strategy.
So when that happens,
I imagine he would be designating people.
yeah, but the council's decision, the Attorney General, be the chair, would have to sign off on that decision, or this bill would just totally delegate that authority to maybe a staff person in the council or something like that.
It seems like that role and responsibility would come directly to the Attorney General, or from the Attorney General, or like their agent. But I may ask you to repeat your question to make sure I fully heard it, Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the amendment number 2 for Senate Bill 49 takes out the Attorney General and substitute the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. So I looked up the Cybersecurity Council, and it says the Attorney General is the chair of that Cybersecurity Council. So, I mean, we're taking out the name Attorney General to put Cybersecurity Council, which is the Attorney General and the chair of that. So I'm wondering why is this semantic, or is it another reason to do that?
Senator Hester may be able to talk a little bit more about the rationale.
What we heard a few minutes ago is that the AG or his designee is not an expert, and that the collective wisdom of the council is. So rather than say consult with the AG, consult with the collective wisdom of the council. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, that's what I think I heard a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. I think I understand now. So when we put this in there, it'll definitely go to the council to make a decision instead of maybe, say, the AG's person here in the General Assembly. So this makes it clear that it goes to the Cybersecurity Council for their expertise instead of another.
It's just consulting with, and I think the AG said, look, you can consult with us all we want, but we don't have the wisdom or expertise. You should consult with the whole council.
Okay, thank you.
And again, thank you to Senator Hester for her leadership on this. The council, the Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council got put back into this. I see that, which is good. My question, because this is the first time I've seen it, or got back to this. There is the Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council, which has the department heads and all that, and expertise in each agency. And they're tasked with to recommend the strategy and implementation of cybersecurity initiatives and recommendations and building a sustainable capability of the state, et cetera, et cetera. And that seems like the same thing that this is saying the other council's doing. So, and I don't know the answer to this. What is the difference between those two councils? Because I know on the one we sit on, we have an education one, we have all these different that have different objectives. And is that the best place to put it, under that council, or the one where we have all the agency heads and experts in that doing the recommending? Because it seems like a lot of industry people in the one we sit on.
Senator Simonaire, thank you for the question. It is rather confusing. It's taken me a couple of years to get to know all the players. The commission, the council that is chaired by the AG does have academics and the private sector and government and probably a few other groups on there as well. So it's a broad group of folks. I personally think it would be great to have somebody from the private sector just reviewing our government strategy, because they come at it from a totally different perspective. I think that the coordinating council, which is in now Bill 69, previously 348, that council is the IT folks from every single state department and executive agency side. So I think that they'll advise kind of upwards, in terms of what they want the state to do. But I also think it's an implementation and a kind of a leveling of the playing field. So I don't see them as contradictory.
The issues we came up with. Because I'm looking in the bill, and it's saying the council shall provide the strategy and implementation of cybersecurity. And that's the council that we're codifying. And I'm just trying to figure out, are we duplicating our work, or is one better suited to, because what we're looking for is one of those councils to provide the direction for the state. And I know we talked about this in the other, I'm just making sure we have the right one that we want advising. And if you can say this is why this is the right one, but it seems like they both have the same objectives. And so that's why it's just a little, I just want to make sure we have the right one that's advising us.
9, correct? Okay. So in terms of codification of the Cybersecurity Coordinating Council, that's in SB 69. So we've switched a little bit. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Right.
So I do believe it's broader in 49. If you look specifically at page 5, lines 9 through 12, it talks about, in consultation with the Attorney General, developing guidance on consistent cybersecurity strategies for counties, municipal corporations, school systems, and all other political subdivisions of the state. And once again, the one that we will talk about in just a second in Senate Bill 69 is just the heads of the is the IT heads of the different executive agencies. I mean, we could park this one and go to 69 if people are not sure about the specific amendment.
Yeah, that might be worthwhile. Before we leave this, however, this list of 8 duties are under the secretary, just so people understand. And the secretary is charged with consulting with the council. So the old 1 through 5 and the new 6 through 8 are duties under the secretary. Just saying. Okay, let's park this for a minute and go to 69. I'm hoping that our conversation will clarify all these bills, so it's not like we're going to have the same conversation 5 times. Okay, let's go to 69. Ms. Foxworth?
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I give a conceptual overview before we dive into the specific bill?
Review of which one, Senator?
Just why 69 and 348 are being combined?
Sure.
Okay, so colleagues, as these two bills came in, 69 created an office to help our localities, our local government, school systems, and health departments, where we've seen an increased level of attack in the past couple of years. Senate Bill 348 codified the governor's executive order, which has an office within that's within DoIT that is in charge of cybersecurity across the state. So 69 was local, and 348 was state level. The good senator sitting from District 33 suggested it might be duplicative to have two different offices dealing with cybersecurity. Therefore, we decided to merge the two bills, create one office within the Department of Information Technology. Within that one office, we decided that each role was very important. And so underneath the state CISO, the cybersecurity information, oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. Under the state CISO, there would be two people, one with accountability for all of state government and one with accountability for the local affiliates. And so what you'll see is a fairly large amendment, but it's actually kind of the merger of two bills to reduce duplication. So I just thought that might be helpful.
I'm going to try to tee off of that explanation just to understand what's in front of us. So the bill that we just put on hold was specifically focused on the role of the Secretary of the Department of Information Technology. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we're parking that over here. The bill in front of us, 69, is now focused on, in MEMA, this would be a new office established in MEMA to set up a cybersecurity coordination operations office. And then I'm trying to understand, if that's what we're doing, what is the relationship with that new office to the Secretary of IT that I guess we just enhanced some of his authorities, her authorities?
Yeah, I think I'd like counsel to walk us through the bill as amended, but you're exactly right. As 69 came in, it established an office within the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. And as 348 came in, it established an office within the Department of IT. So we can't instead of establishing two offices, we merged them together. So there is no longer an office within MEMA. There's only one office within DoIT.
Okay, so then we park 49 over here, so that gets into the Secretary of IT's authorities, separate bill, and this bill actually establishes this new office within DoIT under the Secretary.
Yes.
And then you mentioned something about dividing up state and local coordination. How does that work?
So the Secretary heads the department. The State Chief Information Security Officer is responsible for the office. Within that office, there will be two, I can't remember what we called them, the directors? Two directors. One director of state cybersecurity and one director of local cybersecurity.
Okay, so all within DoIT, you have DoIT, you have a new office. In the new office, you have two directors. One's going to handle the state agencies and departments and protect them on cybersecurity, and one's going to work specifically with the locals.
That is correct, and both those directors report to the State Chief Information Security Officer, who reports to the Secretary and the Governor.
Okay. All in one department?
Yes.
Okay.
So are we clear on that? Okay, so
That was supposed to be the preview to simplify what our good counsel was going to talk about the bill as amended.
$69. So I think it can be helpful to look at 49 as the broad vision casting mechanism, similar to what Senator Hester alluded to, right? So when we look at SB 69, it's not altering or challenging any of the positions that we will be codifying or giving Department of Information Technology or DO-IT authority over. But what SB 69 does kind of hones in on that role a little bit more, adds several positions.
I thought we were wrapping 69 into 348.
As amended, that's what, right. I was just kind of drawing the distinction between what we just looked at 49, kind of based off of Senator Carrozza's question, and bringing us back into 69 with those 348 amendments.
Oh. So we're wrapping 348 into 69, not 69 into 348?
Right. Sorry
Okay.
if I misspoke. 348 goes into SB 69.
Okay.
So maybe it would be helpful to talk through SB 348 first and then bring it into SB 69? Maybe not. Okay. Let's just go through SB 69.
The framework that Senator Hester just mentioned, DO-IT, CISO, state and local branches, why don't we just follow that path? I don't care what the goddamn bill is. Just explain where that structure can be found so we can just follow it in some kind of logical fashion. Senator Washington, is that where you were headed?
Again, Senator Hester, again, I thank you for the compliment, but Senator Hester and Senator Kagan have been the brains, occasionally Senator Simoner. But I was going to say, I really think that if we sort of talk through the bill as amended, because otherwise we will get, I mean, there just was a lot of work, I think, done to get us here, and I think it's a good place. And I think if it explained just what we arrived at, which is the amended bill, I think then folks can tie into it. Yeah, and so then folks can then read it off of that. Does that make sense, Senator Hester? I mean, I think that we should just go through the amended as amended.
Is there an interline copy? No. Is there an interline copy of 69 amended? Do we have that in front of us?
The amendment number? So it should be unofficial copy of Senate Bill 69. No, not
Yeah.
quite. The interlineated should be in the packet. It's not in the,
It's underneath the packet with the triangle. It's a freestanding, interlined.
all right, so SB 69 as amended. So we know that we're merging large parts of 348 into 69. The Cybersecurity Coordination and Operations Office that was originally in SB 69 is removed. We are integrating the Maryland Cybersecurity Council that was in SB 348 into SB 69. We're also adding 3 positions to the council. They'll be representatives or designees of USM, University System of Maryland, Administrative Office of the Courts, and DLS, Department of Legislative Services. We're codifying the Office of Security Management into this bill, which will be established within the framework and body of the Department of Information Technology. The CISO, State Chief Information Security Officer, will lead this office. The director, in terms of leadership and headship, there are 2 additional roles and responsibilities that were not originally contemplated in SB 348. That's Director of Local Cybersecurity and Director of State Cybersecurity. Both of these positions will be appointed by the head of the Office of Security Management, which is the state CISO, State Chief Security Information Security Officer. So as it sounds, the local security manager or the director of local cybersecurity is going to kind of be the boots on the ground response mechanism for local cybersecurity preparedness. When SB 69 was drafted and created, that corresponded with sponsor's intent for the office that was originally in SB 69 to be the framework by which there was a local cybersecurity preparedness and response. And the local agency is going to work with MEMA in creating and performing those responsibilities. So the roles are on, there's a lot of pages that don't have numbers on it because most of this is added text. So let's see if we can start from where there is a number. So if we follow page 3 and follow that to section 3.5-2A-01. I'm about to turn our page. And where we see 3.5-2A-04, this deals with the responsibilities of the office as a whole, which is the Office of Security Management. Right. This office is going to be responsible for the entire cybersecurity strategy policy for all executive branch agencies and counties and municipalities to an extent, and that's where we get into local directive local cybersecurity. Executive is the only one that is formulated in this because legislative and judicial branches have throughout all of these state government and state finance titles their own autonomy, but there is a requirement for the legislative and the judicial to certify compliance with minimum standards set by the Department of Information Technology, so long as they use Network Maryland. The Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council is codified. The membership is under 3.5-2A-05. There are 16 positions that will be on the council, and the council will serve as an advisory role to the office. State Chief Information Security Officer, which heads the Office of Security Management, is going to chair this council. This is the rollover pieces. Most of what I've mentioned have been rollover pieces from SB 348 at this point. In terms of units of state government in general, so executive branch agencies, there's going to be a reporting requirement, a significant reporting requirement that has to be created yearly. And this reporting requirement will require every executive branch to report on budget breakdowns, systems analysis, inventory, resources, procedures, policies in place that assist within the Department of Information Technology in coordinating this best strategy for cybersecurity. Within the bill, so that deals with the state import, local import. When there is a cybersecurity incident, these local entities will have to report, be required to report to their local emergency managers that there was some form of security breach or security incident. Looking for and highlighting those local government requirements now specifically.
Are we done on 69?
I was just gonna, I just located it. I was going to spell out or explain the reporting requirements that applies to county governments. And yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So starting at subsection C, which was just pointed out on that second to last page, the subsection in terms of reporting doesn't apply to municipal corporations. It applies to counties, school systems, and local health departments. So they'll have to report on budgetary items, staff positions, employees, number of employees with access to computer systems and databases. And we'll have to work with local emergency managers to create that coordinated cybersecurity plan that will be implemented throughout the county, school system, or local health department.
Just so I understand, I've got a couple of questions, but on that last point, a local emergency manager, what is that or who is that?
On the microphone.
The operations center at each county?
Yeah. I was just going to say, so MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, has 24 sort of branches. So each county, exactly what Senator Gallion said, each county has one.
So, we're through the bill. Let's roll. Let's put this bill on the floor. I think we should move this first. This is sort of the umbrella. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Any objection to the amendments? We can still discuss them, but let's just adopt the amendment. So we're talking about the bill as amended, the thing Ms. Foxworth just went through. Senator Carrozza?
So I think on Senate Bill 49, I saw there was input from MACO, and I didn't know with the amended version of, with 348 being folded into SB 69 and the responsibilities of the county, if there was feedback from MACO on that section.
We did ask both MACO and MML to participate in our, I think, our second meeting. And I think we got to a point where, they are very welcome of the support provided in this bill. They want help preparing their response plans. They want to be able to call if there's an emergency. They didn't really want to be mandated for training, and they didn't want to be mandated for reporting. We had a conversation amongst our subcommittee groups, the five of us, the four of us, and decided that as a policy, we thought it was important for the security of the state of Maryland that we have minimal oversight over these units of local government that all ride on Network Maryland. And so this is the very most kind of minimal thing we can do, is to ask them to report on certain things, to prepare their emergency response plans, and to provide them with the capacity, the support to do those, so it's not that onerous for them. But basically, we all agreed that DO-IT need to have insight into what was happening on the ground if we were going to be required to bail them out in the case of a cybersecurity attack, and also to protect our state agencies, which are linked through Network Maryland to the locals. So I would say, to answer your question, we have consulted with MACO and MML. They probably don't love this, but they can see why it is necessary, and they do want the state's support.
So they would be gaining assistance in putting together their cybersecurity plans.
Yes.
With the understanding that, and that's on the one network, is that correct? Their requirements are to submit a plan, report the results to the Office of Security Management,
The Federal Department of Homeland Security offers these free vulnerability tests, so they could do those. And then the local emergency managers will help them create their own kind of response plans.
So the incident part mentioned is the training, that the requirement that they do the training?
I'm not sure which part of the bill you're referring to. I'm sorry, there's no page numbers.
I was looking at the last two pages where it looks like it's spelling out the requirements for the county.
The Senator, on the last page, it says report cybersecurity incidents. Hacking, and incident is not training. That, I believe, an incident is an incident. Where there's been a breach, there's a problem.
So, sure, they would be required to report an incident, but did you mention there was also required training somewhere else in the,
The training is a separate bill.
okay,
And the incidents here refer to a breach.
a
And
breach, okay.
we asked, there was two local county IT people and two municipal IT people. And we asked them, what do they do in the case of a cybersecurity attack? And it was like a resounding shrug from all four of them. There's no current methodology for reporting a cybersecurity incident. So the committee was on the phone today with Secretary Leahy and Russ Strickland from both agencies. They both agreed that the reports should go through the local emergency management personnel so that they can mobilize the required resources depending on what type of attack it is.
But they would still be required to report it to the state if they've been breached.
Well, to the state through MEMA. And then MEMA would get on the local emergency manager person would get on the phone to the state CISO or whoever else it is and say, hey, this is what's happening. Can you help us out? They can also mobilize the National Guard. They can also mobilize the private sector. But there's a certain reluctance, Senator Carrozza. When something goes wrong, people don't want to report. And the more time that passes, the worse the problem gets. So by reporting it locally, with a person who that was what everybody agreed was the best.
Senator Carrozza? So the issue came up that a lot of the smaller counties, Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, Western Maryland, and especially the small municipalities, did not have the desire to invest in the equipment, hardware, training, and certification that's really required by the state to bring their operation up to a very high level of competency. So basically, we are recognizing that they're responsible, and help me, Senator Hester, if I'm wrong, they're responsible for their security to the level at which they're comfortable, knowing that DoIT and these other organizations are available for consultation and even for us to do an MOU, hire for training and assistance with these different pieces. But they almost to the person didn't want to buy into the full, robust level that the state agencies are going to have. So that's, like Senator Hester said, they're reluctant. They want us there, but they don't want to be part of it because of the economic cost and also the personnel cost. They'd have to hire a lot of very smart, very high-priced people. If they think that DoIT and the CISO are there to provide the technical expertise and guidance, then they'll go it on their own and be responsible for the level and depth of their own security. And did I say that right, Senator Hester?
I've got a question. 2 pages past page 3 of the bill, so I assume it's page 5. It starts with C and D at the top of the page. So wherever, is that right? Maybe not. It's 3 pages past 3 of 3. New language. And Senator Hester, I'm going to ask you a question I asked you in my office a week ago. Where it says under D2, Director of Local Cybersecurity shall work in coordination with MEMA to provide technical assistance, coordinate resources, improve cybersecurity. I know historically MEMA has been general responsibility has been respond to acute disasters. So my question is, how do they provide technical assistance, these 24 people, when in fact that might not be their bailiwick? So, we talked about this, and so I want to raise it again. If they're just going to make a phone call to someone up higher up, is it just an extra phone call between the county IT person, who hopefully does or works with cybersecurity, or the school system cybersecurity? And I'm just trying to figure out organizationally, what is the value added of the local MEMA local emergency, whatever his or her title is, if they know nothing about, if they're not sophisticated in technology or cybersecurity, how do they fit here? So I'm trying to understand how we translate that paragraph.
Take a first stab at it, and then I'll ask my colleagues to jump in. So it's about the relationships and what MEMA is currently doing. These emergency managers are currently working with their counties on response and preparedness planning. And so they would take on the role of assisting with cybersecurity response and preparedness planning. So that relationship would be deepened. That's okay. Did you hear what I said? Okay. So it's about the relationships that these folks have on the ground and the fact that they're already doing response and preparedness planning. They go through this exercise with their county governments around a lot of different disasters, and a cybersecurity attack or preparedness, it could bring down your systems, but then it could also have an electrical outage or like some other kind of critical infrastructure component. And so by doing this preparedness planning and requiring them to submit those reports, we will be further strengthening those pre-existing relationships. Then in the event of an attack, the local folks will know who to call, and then MEMA can figure out who the best person to call is, whether it's the state CISO at a very high level, whether it's an office person within DO-IT, whether it's the fire department, because there's also an electrical fire as well. So they'll do that organization. We did talk specifically about this with Secretary Leahy, our state CISO, and Director Strickland. They all want this relationship. We tried to come up with an analogy. It's just like when when you're flying the plane, the pilots are the ones who are actually doing the technical work, but the airport needs to run. And so MEMA kind of does everything else that's not the technical piece. Would my colleagues like to comment on this?
I think Senator Hester did a good job with that, and I think, Chairman, it's also expanding our understanding of what an emergency management is, and saying that cyber emergencies are like flooding, are like increasingly they've been engaged, certainly with COVID-19. National Guard, we just have to expand what we think of. So I do believe Senator Hester described it properly, that one, there's the existing relationships with locals that people are reluctant to report. They want to report it to somebody they know. And then two, we have to begin the process without mandating it yet, but begin the process where the locals can trust and that there can be this coordination, on our highways, on our roads, on our system. So hopefully that answers it.
Thank you. I had the same question, and I asked during the meeting, and Chip was the guy who was under Secretary Lee, and he said this would be a good idea. And I think what he was saying, it wasn't just, because I had that same question, why you call him if you got to get to the other person? And he was saying that DO-IT handles the technical aspect, but there's more aspects to an emergency in the sense that they may have to bring out the Defense Force or some other, and MEMA is primed to get those other resources that DO-IT normally doesn't interact with. And I think that was it's a bigger package, and that's why they were supporting that.
Fine. I'm just thinking of what happened in Baltimore a year and a half ago with the breach. I don't know if it called into play people responding to electrical outage or National Guard, And I guess if I was the IT person, I would have made the first call to someone, say, help me, we're being held hostage. And I'd go right to the technical people. I mean, if this works, I'm fine with it. I mean, the rest of the structure seems fine. I was just trying to figure it out. And I agree that we have to update our concept of emergency response, that it's beyond just flooding and bridge collapses and stuff like that. So I get that. I just was trying to see the lack of technological experience, and more we're seeing hacks. The State Board of Elections, I said there were like hundreds of hacks or attempted hacks, like every couple of weeks. So that was my only concern.
They said they actually have both. Where sometimes they will go directly to do it because that's what the issue is, and they can still do that. But if it's a bigger scope, that MEMA would be helpful in that.
I was just going to make a point, Senator, to answer your question or to address it on qualifications and expertise for Director of Local Cybersecurity. So under this prong that we were looking into, D, 1I, the Director of Local Cybersecurity is going to be appointed by the State Chief Information Security Officer. So the bill doesn't necessarily establish the qualifications that the cybersecurity director of local cybersecurity will have, but maybe that'll, assuage some of the qualifications concerns. Because
I expect they're going to be fully sophisticated in technology and cyber. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, that's what they're there for. So I'm not worried about that. Okay, further discussion on the bill. Further discussion. Okay, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, we've all been congratulating ourselves and each other, and totally Senator Hester, whose leadership has been amazing. But it would be terrible for us to not publicly, again, thank Alexis Foxworth for nights and weekends and just really helping guide us. She's been amazing, and as well as Nithin Venkatraman. Am I close? Venkatraman, who is Senator Hester's chief of staff, who has also been nights and weekends and really helping drive this train. So our staff really helps us do our job and make us look good. So I had two quick questions, Senator Hester or Ms. Foxworth. And one, someone texted me and wondered on page 3+2, the same page the chairman flagged that starts with C and D, in the middle of the page, A2, with the listing of who's covered in local government, school boards, school systems, health department, and I was just asked, local boards of elections, how are they covered for cyber attacks? Is that, so I wasn't sure of that, and are they sufficiently covered? And my second question, I'll throw both questions out at the same time. One page back at the bottom, like 3/4, talking about this new CISO, the State Chief Information Security Officer. This is going to be a pretty critical person for the safety of our state and our locals. And I'm just wondering, we've got appointed and serve at the pleasure of the governor, be supervised by the secretary, serve as CISO, blah, blah, blah. I'm wondering if we could put in language that that person should be vetted and approved by executive noms and by the Senate. And if there are no objections, I would love for that to be possibly considered a friendly amendment for that one.
The amendment is to put the chief
CISO.
technology CISO person advising consent of the Senate. Any objection? Done. You have that, Ms. Foxworth? Okay. And then to the first question, and then we're going to go to a vote.
Yep.
okay. So if we wanted to particularly or specifically include local boards of elections, it's my understanding that they wouldn't be included within this units of local government. So we would have to specifically include them within that language.
Senator Hester, didn't we address that and they did not want to be part of the executive group? They have their own freestanding computer and they don't necessarily interact with One Maryland. So
totally fine as an answer. I just wanted to make sure for those watching at home and who are wondering about that, because certainly election security has been something that our nation has been quite focused on. So having that conversation publicly, I think, is important, so I'm not suggesting that they be added.
Right.
They're already covered.
And just
Thank
real quick, if the legal counsel could also remind us of those other 2 or 3 organizations that are not part of our bill here. Is it Morgan State? University
Maryland.
Systems not
The
included.
Maryland Port Administration.
Debate on the Senator Simonaire.
Quick things. Since you amended it to be appointed, approval of the Senate, is this a term or is this a lifelong appointment? There's no term in here. Okay, that's fine.
That's right.
And then, the last thing, I'll just make a note. In the discussions, it was brought up that the department thought their bill was relatively non-controversial and it's very important to them, and they thought putting it in here in a heavy lift in the other side could jeopardize the whole thing. I'm going to support the bill. I think it is, but that should be noted that was a concern.
Duly noted. Further discussion? If not, will anybody be voting against the amended amended 69? Anybody voting against it? It'll be reported to the floor at 11-0. Okay, so 348, we can just vote down. Vote unfavorable on 348. We don't need.
Move unfavorable.
Okay, any objection to the unfavorable for what was left of 348? Seeing none, that's unfavorable. Let's go back to 49. We don't have to have a long discussion, just let's put that back before us. I'm going to assume it has a move and it's been moved and seconded. Discussion of 49, which is the overall strategy and direction set by the Secretary in consultation with the Council. That's before us right now. Discussion, Senator Simonaire.
Thank you. And looking at the bill, it says the Secretary is responsible for carrying out the following duties, and it lists all these. And we just passed 69, which says we have an interagency council that's going to provide the strategy and implementation of cybersecurity, build and sustain, and then in carrying out its duties may consult with outside experts, including experts in private sector, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here, in the very provision telling the department what to do, we're going to have them advised from a different council for basically the same overall strategy. I don't know why we're having 2 different councils. I would suggest we put this council we just voted on in place of the Maryland Cyber Council, or unless you can give me a good reason why.
Challenge?
This is a very good point. There's more than one council. We just codified the other one. It's not law yet, so I don't know if we can reference it or not. But we could just also just strike this out and let them consult with whoever they want.
What's the will of the body? I'm sorry?
Can we hear from Ms. Foxworth about the distinction?
No, it's a policy question, I think.
I think we could just strike out the reference to in consultation with, and it still defines what they're required to do. So in line 2 of page 5 and line 9 of page 5, strike out in consultation with the council. And it just says developing guidance on, it tells them what they're responsible for doing. It just doesn't say who they're getting the counsel from.
10, lines 9 and 10 are going to have to be rejiggered.
That's the amendment.
I'm sorry?
That's the amendment.
Yeah, but what will it say? In consultation with the developing
No,
guidance?
It'll say 8, developing guidance or consistent cybersecurity, ...
Okay. We
I mean,
can also
that's
say.
how the rest of them are.
We can also say with appropriate counsels. I mean, if we want to keep it generic. Okay, so the motion then is to remove in consultation with the Attorney General, and will remove in line 9 in consultation through general, and it's developing guidance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so is that, okay. Any objection to that? Okay, Senator.
If we're on page 1 of the voting packet where the original amendments for SB 49 were, so we had the one amendment that was striking the Attorney General. Now we're striking the Maryland Cybersecurity Council, correct? And now it's just going to be a general consultation? Is that, I'm just trying to follow along, just.
Eight, we'll skip the first 2, 4, 6 words, and we'll be developing guidance.
Okay, just strike that.
Yeah,
Okay, and we already, the other amendments took care of
right.
we had already taken out the Attorney General on line
We're
6.
taking 4 more words out in 9 before Attorney General.
Right, and then we had already taken out on line 2 in consultation with the Attorney General?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, will anybody be voting against the amended Senate Bill 49? Seeing none, that'll be reported along with 69 unanimously to the floor.
One more cyber-related bill, which is SB 351. So Senate Bill 351 is a departmental by the Department of Information Technology. Essentially, this bill expands the definition of personal identifiable information and changes it to personally identifiable information. The bill governs data sharing policies and procedures that state governments and local governments have to abide by when they share this expanded set of personally identifiable information. It requires the executive branch agencies to comply with these guidelines in data sharing and data collection as defined within Department of Information Technology policies and procedures. Counties and municipalities are exempt from several of the requirements. They do not have to comply with specific Department of Information Technology guidelines in terms of the lengthy list that's within the bill. But they do have to maintain good faith when they are handling personally identifiable information and collecting data. Executive branch agencies, but not including cities, counties, they have to identify legitimate government purposes for the collection of personally identifiable information, must describe the purpose of personally identifiable information, must adopt privacy governance, and there are several other requirements that the bill lists. There are certain exclusions that this care and collection of PII does not apply to. That's certain public health and public safety requirements. The bill is clear that the scope of the bill is intended to conform to the breadth of the Public Information Act, meaning the intent does not want to supersede that act within Maryland law. There was some opposition on that point from MACO and MML. I'm sorry, from, I don't think it was from, thank you. It was from Baltimore's office and MACO, and there was specific concern about the scope of this personal information and kind of its implications for, for the Public Information Act. There's an amendment sponsored by Senator Hester, and the amendment essentially authorizes a county or municipality to request support from Department of Information Technology when they are developing their cybersecurity best practices internally. That's it.
In front of us, is there a motion? It's been moved, it's been seconded somewhere, seconded. The amendment, any objection to the amendment?
This sounds an awful lot like what we did at Senate Bill 69. Is this necessary, or did we pick it up under 69, Senator Hester?
This bill came in along, it was a departmental bill, it came in parallel to 348. So it's dealing with personally identifiable information, which is part of cybersecurity. Like, because if you get attacked, your data can be, released and sold. But this is more specifically about the data and the way the data is handled.
So you think it's appropriate?
I think it's appropriate,
Yeah,
yes.
fine. I just
100%.
wanted to double check. Mr. Chair, we did have a letter. This bill was in its second year. I think, according to my records, it used to be House Bill 340. A letter was sent on behalf of T. Rowe Price, who administers the college investment plan and the Maryland 529 plan. They requested that they also be exempted since they have their own outside computers, own outside cyber security and walls. And I'd make reference to a 3-page letter that was sent to the administration last year from Bryson Popham to Kiefer Mitchell requesting that exemption, as several other departments have done.
First, I think we had the Hester amendments. Any objection to those? Okay, they're in. Now the motion is to exempt out,
T. Rowe Price College.
well, let's not name them.
Oh.
Let's, the manager of the 529 program for the state of Maryland.
And the college investment plan.
Yeah,
There's two of them, two plans.
I know, I'd rather not name the
No, that's
broker.
fine.
It could be someone
Yeah,
different.
the vendor.
Discussion on the Riley amendment. Okay, with no objection, that's adopted. Vice Chair.
I have a question for council. On page 5, lines 11 through 14, this subtitle does not apply to the sharing of PII between the Maryland Department of Health and any state or federal agency as allowed or required by law. Why do we have as allowed? And what would that cover? So the feds tell us we have to tell them about our COVID cases. We tell them about our COVID cases, but allowed seems a little too flimsy.
I'm not sure the intent of using that phrase. This was drafted externally, and there were some kind of interesting obstacles we had to overcome in terms of interpreting it accurately. So changing or strengthening that language to a phrase that makes it stronger wouldn't deviate from the meaning behind it. And I'm trying to think of a stronger phrase now, Senator Kagan.
For your consideration would be excising, deleting the words allowed or. So it would read as required by law or regulation. Just take out allowed or.
So the
Discussion.
subtitle.
Discussion. Yeah. Senator Riley, you want to speak to it?
I'm fine.
Your light's on.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I just don't know if there's a term of art or there's a practice. I mean, obviously, the House can always fix it if we take it out. But there may be something we don't know in terms of what is allowed and whatever. So I'm fine with it. I hate to do it blindly without knowing the context. But if there's no objection, Senator Hester.
I'm just getting some information that this may be related to HIPAA. Yeah, and So I don't know the consequences of taking those words out.
HIPAA is obviously about our personal private health insurance, health data, health information. Just because it's allowed to be shared with the federal government, I think that really undercuts our HIPAA protections. So I like what the chairman said, which is if it's the will of this body to remove allowed or, and if it turns out that that is a shocking irresponsibility and council learns that, then we can fix it on the floor, we can fix it in the House, but I think it really undercuts our privacy.
Any objection to adopting that amendment, removing allowed or? Seeing no objection, that's adopted. The bill as amended is before you. Further discussion? Senator Hester, you want to speak to it? Senator Hester, your light's on. Do you want to speak to it? Oh, okay. Will anybody be voting against it? If not, we will report 351 to the floor unanimously. Okay, let me just mention two items before we get to the next bill. We're going to have to recess for about 5 or 8 minutes at 6:10. Just for a short, we'll call it a bathroom break. There's something I have to take care of. And at around 6:30, we do have some food coming. We'll just spread out as we eat, either in the hallway or in the chairs back there. And there's pizza, hopefully vegetarian and meat. I don't know what we ordered. Hopefully that'll come at 6:30. We've made some progress, but we still have a lot more work to do. Okay, let's go to 183.
Yeah. I was just wondering, what time are we talking about? The time on our smartphone or the time on that watch right there? That clock behind you?
That's off by an hour.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we say we're staying till 8, that's an extra hour. Right now it's 10:06, so we'll see how it goes. Okay.
Senate Bill 183, Audiology and Speech Language Pathology Interstate Compact. This is sponsored by Senators Young and Rosa Pep. This bill creates an interstate compact for the practice of audiology and speech language pathology. It outlines the requirements to participate in the compact. It establishes the Audiology and Speech Language Pathology Compact Commissions, outlining its responsibilities and the membership on the commission. Bill is contingent, similar to my other interstate compacts, on the enactment of legislation being passed in 9 other states. The compact itself will come into effect upon enactment by that 10th member state. There was opposition from several entities, and actually we did hold this bill, I think, 2 weeks ago. Because of the lack of consensus on all fronts, we placed it back on the voting list because American Speech and Hearing Association and the ENTs have come to agreement and seem to be in the best place in terms of consensus building as they have been throughout this entire process. So I'll just read out the opposition again. It's from the Board of Examiners for Audiologists, Hearing Aid Dispensers, and Speech Language Pathologists originally. There was opposition from the Maryland Society of Otolaryngologists and opposition from MedChi. There are amendments that are presented in the packet, and they are on page 2. There's a second set of amendments that begin on page 4 for the same bill. You can please disregard. Those amendments are integrated in the amendments on page 2 to 3. And these sponsor amendments essentially make changes, minor changes to the definition of telehealth, indicate that the practice in a member state is based on receiving the privilege to practice in that state. Requires an applicant to have completed a clinical practicum as required by the commission instead of a licensing board as it was originally drafted. When an active duty individual or active duty personnel changes their home state, they must change its designation only through application for licensure. In a new state, changes adverse actions. So originally a lot of these adverse actions were similar to the compact SB 139, which is occupational therapy. Now we're allowing the member state, which is not their place of residence, to recover costs of adverse action investigations and we are allowing or permitting the member state to take adverse actions against the licensee in accordance with member state laws, which is a little different from SB 139, which was based on home state laws and home state taking that adverse action. Finally, member state who takes action against adverse action against a licensee, they're required to notify every state that the licensee has received a privilege to practice in. That about sums it up.
It's been moved, the bill's been moved favorably. Is there a second? Second, any objection to the sponsor amendments, which hopefully came about by building consensus among some of the players? On the adoption of the amendment, Senator?
Ask about, you can, no, I'm not on the adoption. I have questions about some of the other opposition.
Okay, let's, any objection to adopting the amendment? So the bill before us is a bill as amended. Senator Carrozza.
So as we've been going through these, we've been trying to see where the different compacts are, and this was one that had not built the consensus. You're saying it was brought back before us because one of the key groups is on board now, but who is still opposed to it? So I wanted to clarify that. I'm just trying to understand who supports it and who opposes it at this point.
These groups, the original groups that opposed it during testimony, MedChi, I think it's the Maryland Society of Otolaryngology, that's the Maryland Society of Otolaryngologists and Board of Examiners, audiologists, hearing aid dispensers, and speech-language pathologists. They were initially opposed to the bill because they felt it conflicted with Maryland state law and expanded the scope of practice. There was consensus building between two key stakeholders. Their ear, nose, and throat agency, and I think it's the American Society or American Speech and Hearing Association. I hope I'm not messing up that acronym there. But they worked long and hard to make sure that there were amendments that both of those key groups agreed upon. Now, MedChi, Society of Otolaryngologists, and the Board of Examiners, I haven't heard any recanting of their original opposition. So as it stands, it doesn't appear like their opposition has been taken away because nothing that they opposed has been changed within these amendments.
So ASHA has come on board.
ASHA is on board.
Okay. We don't know if anybody else, or they and the other group are on board. The
Right.
medical people, we don't know if they are. Probably not.
Right.
That's our assumption. Mm-hmm. The discussion on the bills amended. Will anybody be voting no? And feel free to. I just want to be efficient here. Senator Gallion's a no. Lamb's a no. Anybody else? Okay, 9-2 with Lamb and Gallion in the negative. Okay, let's go to 367.
Senate Bill 367, Housing and Community Development Neighborhood Revitalization Programs Application Requirements. This is sponsored by Senator McCray. This bill expands the requirements for applications to the Department of Housing and Community Development for projects specifically within the Community Legacy Program, the Neighborhood Business Development Program, and the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative Program. It does this by requiring the applications to include a letter of support from the legislative district in which the project is located before approval of said project. There was opposition to the bill from MML, Maryland Municipal League, Individual Citizens, and Making Home Possible, that organization. Each stakeholder interest group disagreed with those pre-approval requirements. There also was an informational letter which suggests that pre-approval requirements could form as a legislative veto. There's one set of sponsor amendments which substantially alter this bill. They begin on page 6 of our packet. And essentially, the pre-approval requirement is shifted to a post-approval requirement. So the amendments require the Department of Housing and Community Development to notify members of the congressional delegation for the district where an approved project is located by email and within 14 days after approving the project. As opposed to pre-approval notification, this post-approval notification applies to projects under the Community Legacy Program, Neighborhood Business Development Program, and the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative Program, which were initially in the bill. And it adds this post-approval notification to the rental housing program and projects for the partnership rental housing program. MML specifically has withdrawn their opposition to these amendments. I haven't heard from the other two individuals specifically changing or altering that testimony. Yes, because of the amendments.
Just so, I'm sorry, Senator Washington.
I'm going to move unfavorable. It's a slippery slope. I'll just speak to that. I understand, and again, it's my colleague, I understand, both the amendments and the bill. I understand, wanting to advocate and to notify, but I do not believe it's the role of us as senators, as legislators, to approve or disapprove or to ask for specific notification when there are projects. I mean, I think that there could be some other way to get around that, but I don't know if we should be legislating that. That's my humble opinion.
It's moved and seconded to move unfavorable on 367. Discussion? Will anybody be voting in opposition to the unfavorable? Okay, that's 10-0 with Senator Ellis absent. Next, please. Let's go to 687.
Senate Bill 687, State and Local Housing Programs, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. This is sponsored by Senator Smith. This bill requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to submit a yearly report to the Governor and the General Assembly, with an initial report to be made by December 1st of this year, 2021, and every year thereafter. It also lists several factors included within the bill that report has to include. Items include amount of financial assistance provided, housing accessibility for disabled residents, et cetera. The bill also requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to administer programs that will affirmatively further housing, and that term of art is defined within the bill as taking meaningful actions, in addition to action aimed at combating discrimination to overcome patterns of segregation and to foster inclusive communities. This bill requires the department to require, so it isn't a particular mandate, to require local governments, housing authorities, and private entities that receive funding from DHCD to affirmatively further fair housing. It requires these agencies that receive funding to submit assessments to the department prior to receiving funding. The items that must be included within the assessment are also provided for. The assessment must include summary of housing issues, analysis of data to identify segregation patterns, identification of areas, housing priorities and goals, and strategies to implement said goals. Requires comprehensive plans that local jurisdictions create, including assessment of fair housing within those confines. The bill takes effect January 1st of 2022. MML and MACO requested amendments essentially saying that the assessment requirements were too cumbersome. There was no opposition, but there are sponsor amendments that in some way alters or maybe softens the blow of the bill as it pertains to MML and MACO, because it pushes back the yearly reporting requirement and makes the reporting requirement due to be made within 5 years as opposed to every year. The initial report is required to be made before December 1st, 2022, instead of the first date that we had originally. Significantly alters the elements that are to be included in the assessment. And there may be a reprint within your packet, and I should have. It's just the amendments. Okay, thank you. So the amendments were listed separately, so they're not in the packet. On top it says proposed amendments to SB 687, so they're not included. The amendments also remove private entities from all of the requirements under the bill, alters the assessment portion placed upon local jurisdictions, and it keeps the comprehensive plan requirement and allows the Department of Planning and the Department of Housing and Community Development to assist in creating this comprehensive plan.
Let's put the motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. There are amendments. Anybody object to the amendments? Okay. Senator?
Thank you very much. Madam Counsel, a question for you. So if it removes the private projects, what projects are included? Those that get state and county and municipal funding?
So it removes the private entities from having to essentially conform to those requirements before receiving funding.
Right.
So now it applies to local governments and housing authorities instead of local governments, housing authorities, and private entities that have to conform.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Carrozza?
I'm just trying, I know there's been a little back and forth on this with MML. They weren't aware going into this that there were amendments, but now there are amendments. So I'm trying to figure out if the back and forth with these new amendments, which are Bill's sponsor amendments, if they are addressing MML's concerns. So I'm just trying to piece it together at this point.
The short answer is I haven't received formal notification that they have, felt like their concerns have been integrated. However, the MML organization specifically said that each year to provide a report, each year to do an assessment was too much. So the bill as amended would extend that mandatory reporting deadline or timeline from each year to every 5 years.
Every 5
so
years.
It does create a bit of a gap. And the assessment procedures and protocols are also significantly changed.
Senator Carrozza, does that take care of? Okay. Okay. Further discussion on the bill as amended. The reporting is once every 5 years instead of annually. Will anybody be voting against the amended 687? Senator Gallion is a no, please. And so that's a 10-1 vote on 687 as amended. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. There is pizza back here. Many of us are vaccinated. Staff is not, and some other people are not. So let's spread out since we're taking masks off and just spread out either back there or wherever. We'll take 15, 20 minutes. Don't gobble it down. I don't want indigestion. So we're going to recess for about 20 minutes, and we'll take up at 6:30. Okay.
Senate Bill 699, Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative Program Fund, sponsored by Senator McCray. This bill extends the mandatory appropriation within the budget to the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative Program Fund for 4 more years. There was no opposition and there is no amendment to the bill.
And it's my understanding that B&T said fine, correct? Okay, this is the Bernie bill for Baltimore, renewing it. It's been moved by Senator Washington, I assume. The second is by Senator Riley. Discussion on the bill. I don't think there's any opposition. Will anybody be Senator Washington?
In its title, Baltimore Regional, so it funds project Baltimore County, also Anne Arundel County, so it's a broader bill. Thanks.
Anybody be voting against 699? Then we will mark it as 11-0. Next bill.
Senate Bill 745, Health Occupation, State Board of Massage Therapy Examiners Revisions. This is sponsored by Senator Elford. This bill alters the requirement of licensed massage therapist members on the Board of Massage Therapy Examiners from graduating from a board-approved course to a board-approved program. The bill alters the educational requirements for licensure for those graduating from an approved institution to graduating from an institution approved by the Maryland Higher Education Commission with credit hours from a board-approved curriculum that's endorsed by the Massage Therapy Accreditation Board or an equivalent entity. In addition, there has to be completion of at least 24 basic and applied science course hours or 24 regular hours or either 360 basic and applied science contact hours. The bill changes the requirement for registered massage practitioners to include graduation from a massage therapy program that has a curriculum that's been endorsed by the Commission on Massage Therapy Accreditation. In terms of criminal history records, it reduces the number of fingerprint sets to be collected from 2 to 1 in terms of criminal history checks, and requires a background checking agency to provide revised criminal history records to the board if new information is reported. The bill also lists the considerations that the board must take into account in renewing information from criminal history checks. There was no opposition to the bill at the hearing. There is an amendment or a set of amendments by the sponsor. The amendments clarify the definition of massage therapy by stating that the practice of massage.
What page, Alexis?
So the amendments begin on page 22 of our packet. So just striking the bracket to show that the practice of massage therapy does not include laying on of hands with pressure or movement to affect the electromagnetic energy field of the human body.
Is there a motion to adopt the bill? It's been moved, it's been seconded. Any objection to the sponsor amendment? Seeing no objection, that's adopted. Senator.
Council, could you please tell us at the bottom of page 23, what does this mean? Does not apply to an installation of a photovoltaic system that does not require internet connection to the building's grid tied electrical system. What is that all about?
Next bill. Wrong bill. It's the next bill.
Oh, excuse me. Got it. Oh, I know this one. Never mind.
Senator, you're reading ahead. You're ahead of the class. Points. Okay. The bill as amended. Will anybody be voting no on 745? That will go to the floor as amended, unanimous. Next bill.
Senate Bill 762, Maryland Electricians Act revisions. This is sponsored by Senator McCray. This bill establishes a state board licensing scheme for master electricians, journeyperson electricians, and apprentice electricians, whereby these classes must be established by the board by July 1st, 2021. Consequently, the bill prohibits local jurisdictions from issuing licenses. The bill establishes registration requirements and permits local jurisdictions to register registrants as opposed to licensed licensees. This bill requires cities and counties to adopt regulations relating to registration of licensees, and the registration requirements must meet or exceed those requirements for state licenses, which vary based on the class of electrician. Requires the state board to require continuing education requirements. Requires local jurisdictions to comply with yearly reporting requirements. If no licensing scheme is established by July 1st, 2024 for low-voltage electricians, the Department of Labor under this bill is required to adopt the regulations. There are no sponsor amendments that have been adopted. However, there are a couple of amendments that are requested that were presented during testimony for those that signed up as favorable with amendments. And there is an amendment that is sponsored by Senator Riley. So the amendments that were presented during the hearings essentially all relate to the definition of low voltage. The sponsor of the bill has said that these amendments are friendly and that he's not opposed to defining low voltage electrician and creating a definition for that, and creating a work group if there is no licensing scheme that's set in place by this July 1st, 2024 date. So the low voltage electricians would have a work group that's composed of several individuals to make recommendations on licensure of these individuals. Okay, so those aren't adopted, but those are the ones that have been proposed and will likely be presented on the House side. Now, Senator Riley's.
Let's hold a second.
Okay.
So the sponsor had no problem with defining low voltage. I think I heard that. And then also I heard the idea of a summer group to define that in other topics. I'm not sure what the will of the opponents or the favorable with amendments or the sponsor.
So several folks signed up essentially saying that low voltage electricians need to be under a separate type of pathway scheme. There have to be different requirements because their day-to-day is different from those high voltage electricians. And so there should be some type of mechanism in place for them to have a level of separation. He also said that there should be clarity in defining the term low voltage. And in terms of providing that clarity, the term low voltage electrician should be limited energy integrators. And they, in their testimony, several folks kind of expounded upon that definition. The sponsor of this bill stated that he was okay with creating this work group, putting that in place in the event that these low voltage electricians were not licensed or there wasn't a procedure in place for low voltage electricians to be licensed by July 1st, 2024. So sponsor is okay with creating the work group to create these requirements for low voltage electricians. That's in step with these requested amendments from the slew of folks who presented testimony. But in addition to this work group requirement that they're asking for, they're also asking for clarity on the definition of low voltage electrician. But that's not in opposition to the work group, that's in addition to the work group.
Does the bill itself address low voltage?
The only reference to low voltage is saying that they have to be licensed by July 1st of 2024. And if not, the Department of Labor has to issue or adopt regulations to govern their performance of the task. The Department of Labor, and what they're asking for in their amendments is for a work group to create the policies and procedures in place.
Mr. Chairman, one of the comments that was made by Mr. Wilson, I think his last name is Jack, first name Jack, is we were talking about solar panels, and that he had no problem on providing or not having a licensed master electrician or journeyman on site while they were installing the panels, running no voltage wires, not live wires down to the panel, but he wanted the electrician there at the panel when they tie into the grid. So this amendment just clarifies that intent, that you don't have to have a licensed electrician or journeyman on site to put up the panels and run the wires over to the panel. Since there's no live wires. As this committee probably knows, in order to put up solar panels, you have to apply to BG&E for permit, you have to apply to the county for the permits. So there's supervision and oversight to that point, and then when you tie it into the live grid, that's when you need the electrician.
So running the wires, you don't need an electrician?
Not the solar wires.
Do we know, have we heard from the people who wanted this bill, if they care about that or not?
Well, the testimony from Mr. Wilson, who represents the folks who do union training and accreditation of the journeymen and masters, he had no problem with it.
And then was he from the electrical union?
Yeah. I don't know if he was a union guy, but he and his dad ran, and I think the son, the one who testified still does, runs the shops where they do the training
Right.
for both union and non-union.
Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'd like to move the Riley amendment and that we vote it somewhat quickly before we all burn out. And then people watching at home will say, what's up with that? Are they a bunch of dim bulbs or what?
This is where they say, get the hook. Talk to anybody who's involved in that industry, so, but seeing no other objection, the amendment is adopted. Back to the other issue that Council Foxworth raised. Do we need to put in language that says before adopting regulations, the department should bring together a work group of affected parties for advice on promulgating the regulations? I'm just a little unclear about that part of the bill. And other people should jump in here. You know as much as I do, or more. Okay. So they have till 24 to come up with this? Okay, so if we don't do it this year, we still have next year. Okay, let's hold it till tomorrow. We'll still move it for crossover. I think 24 hours. I can speak to Senator McCray and find out a little bit more about this. Any objection to that? Senator?
Mr. Chair, I was part of this work group, and some of the questions that are coming up, I would like to check with Jack Wilson, who Senator Riley mentioned, is actually he's on the Maryland State Board of Master Electricians, and he led this work group. And so I was trying to figure out if he was up to speed on Senator Riley's amendment and some of the other issues that are being raised.
Slow it down. It'll be on the list tomorrow. Gather information tomorrow a.m. or early p.m., and then hopefully we'll move on it tomorrow. That's a hold. Next bill.
Senate Bill 922, Office of Legislative Audits, Acceptance and Investigation to Allegations of Fraud, Waste, and Abuse. So 873, we have to hold that one pending approval for the fiscal note by B&T. So Senate Bill 922 grants the office, this bill is sponsored by Senator Lamb, and it grants the Office of Legislative Audits the authority to compel witnesses to appear and to compel the disclosure of confidential records. Requires the Office of the Attorney General, the Office of the State Prosecutor, and other state and local entities to share information with the Office of Legislative Audits that is necessary for investigation. The bill limits OLA, Office of Legislative Audit, disclosure of information pertaining to fraud, waste, or abuse allegations to the following individuals: OLA employees, federal, state, and local officials that provide justification to receiving that information. The bill requires OLA to create a fraud hotline for individuals to report fraud, waste, and abuse allegations and permits OLA to investigate those allegations. This bill requires executive branch agencies to post notices in their office and on their websites about reporting fraud, waste, and abuse, and to distribute information upon OLA request and to report unethical conduct. There was no opposition to the bill presented at hearing, and there are sponsor amendments sponsored by Senator Lamb. The sponsor amendments repeal the access that Office of Legislative Audits has to inspect confidential records. It also removes the authority of the Office of Legislative Audits to compel witnesses and to compel these subpoenas. Removes the state government reporting requirement on unethical conduct, and essentially requires OLA to consult with Office of the Attorney General, Office of State Prosecutor, to develop appropriate language to provide safeguards regarding OLA's duty to investigate fraud and waste. And also requires state agencies and to also use this consultation to bring forth appropriate language to require state agencies to report unethical conduct. Requires Office of Legislative Audits to report its findings under this authority to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. So essentially a mandate there, instead of the requirements in the bill, encouraging or requiring OLA to develop appropriate language to address these concerns.
It's been moved, it's been seconded. Except for the sponsor problem on the amendments. Anybody object to the Lamb amendments? Okay, they've really been doctored. That was the first unanimous thing we've done in the last 15 minutes was the groan. Okay, any objection? Seeing no objection to the Lamb amendments, they're adopted. The bill as amended is before us. Discussion, debate. Senator.
It's just because it's been a while since this hearing, and we just adopted amendments that I didn't quite follow, but I agreed to them. Senator Lamb, could you just give us an overview of just the bottom line, the bill, and the amendments?
Sure. So this bill came about because Mr. Hook from the Office of Legislative Audits had requested some strengthened authorities to be able to compel agencies to turn over documents and also to require there to be posting of signage about the fraud hotline and website, et cetera, and also create a fraud hotline specifically within the Attorney General's office. In working with Mr. Hook, and he had reached out to others in the state prosecutor's office and also the Attorney General's office, he suggested these amendments to really kind of tone back that authority. He feels like they can work with the different agencies and offices to be able to get access to the information they need, and also to work on the posting of this information too. And so, working with Mr. Hook, we basically scaled back through these amendments a lot of these requirements. So the bill now is much doctored.
To reflect the work done with the Office of the State Prosecutor.
Yeah, so Mr. Hook had ongoing conversations with the state prosecutor's office and the Attorney General's office. So now essentially it requires departments to provide employees information on the fraud hotline.
Thank you.
Okay, the bill's amended. Further discussion or debate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions, either for Ms. Foxworth or the sponsor of the bill. First off, testimony, we got a bunch of unfavorable testimony from the Attorney General's office. Are they okay with the amendment? And second, on page 2 of the amendments, number 1, enhance the authority, duties, and powers of the Office of Legislative Audits related to investigation of facts or allegations of fraud, waste, or abuse conducted under its authority. Can you lay out what that would look like now? And I'm a big fan of the Office of Legislative Audits, so I'm not worried about it. I would love some specifics. What can't they do now that this bill would enable them to do to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse?
So, going through the reprint one more time. So, as it stands in current law, OLA representatives have the ability to inspect confidential records, have the ability to investigate fraud and waste. This bill strikes out the access to confidential records. And it actually strikes out most of everything. So one thing that they could do under current law that they can't do now is have this access to confidential records by law. So that authority is repealed.
What's the justification?
That may be
I
a
said
question
why.
for-
What's the justification for that? Has there been an example of them overstepping?
I haven't received any information. The rationale may be more pointed towards the sponsor, but the repeal of that authority, I'm not sure. But the amendments would, it seems like it is creating a route to develop the proper authority and the proper language that is agreed upon with Office of Legislative Audits, Office of State Prosecutor, and Office of Attorney General, for them to come together to work out the aims of their offices and the appropriate language. But repealing that pre-existing authority, I'm not sure why that choice was made.
I think it was one that I don't think what was conveyed was that they don't have a problem being able to get access to that confidential information. And then two, I think OI actually does still have, I think, subpoena authority under some existing statute to be able to compel that information if they need to. So that was my understanding, but I think that's why it was amended this way.
So I'm looking on page 3. It says amendment number 2 in our packet say on pages 2 through 4, strike in their entirety. The lines beginning with line 20 on page 2 through line 10 on page 4 inclusive. So that means chunk of page 2, chunk of page 4, and all of page 3. So I'm on page 3, and it says, in addition to the authority, blah, 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 OLA, Office of Legislative Audits, may, for the purpose of furthering an investigation, may by subpoena or otherwise, and here's the key, get the access to the production of public and private records, including those that are confidential by law, in the possession of any person, private corporation, institution, board, organization, or other body or entity, and also a person to appear under oath as a witness. I'm not sure why we would be taking that out if we want them to conduct more thorough and accurate investigations of possible fraud. So I have concerns about this amendment, yeah, I'd love to understand it better.
Sure, I'm happy to follow up with Mr. Hook to get some more information about that.
We'll hold it till tomorrow, but I want to move it tomorrow. So gather, make it a priority in the morning.
If I could ask not just Mr. Hook, but also the Attorney General's office, if they're part of this conversation too. I'm really curious. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this bill, and it talks about auditors investigating. And being a CPA, when I see that, I it comes up with some issues because audits are not investigations. Investigation goes to prove a point. And, it seemed like we're asking CPAs and legislative audits to investigate. And that provision in this, I need to look at that. I'm glad it's being held. And there's some issue with that. It might be some professional restrictions to CPAs, auditors doing investigations, especially if they don't belong to a law enforcement agency. And so I need to look at that further and see what the professions say and bring that up tomorrow. So I'm glad we have a hold on this.
I do think Office of Legislative Audits for the DLS does have pretty wide ranging. A lot of some of their audits are regularly scheduled. Mm-hmm. Some are upon request because of complaints of waste, fraud, or abuse. So I think they do both, although committee councilors can correct me if you know. April?
They do both. Yeah. They do currently have some sort of investigatory, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not explicitly. Yeah, I don't know the details of all of it, but yes, they do. They do investigate reports of fraud, waste, and abuse.
Yeah.
To some extent.
And they can refer things to the state prosecutor.
Right. I understand that. Who should do the investigation? But if you're asking auditors to be investigators, there might be some issues with that. So I'll do some reading on that and bring that up tomorrow.
They're not doing criminal investigation. They're doing investigation of waste, fraud, and abuse, then gets forward for criminal activity. But well,
okay.
Senator Lamb?
Right. I think they're doing more informational kind of gathering. Maybe that's not, maybe investigation is kind of a term of art, but I don't think they're not doing criminal investigations. They're really just doing examinations and review of records and then issuing findings. Right?
Yeah. And
Hold, so let's not debate it. But gather information. I mean, people have to take responsibility for seeking out the information they need. Okay, we're going to go back to Senate Bill 8, which was at the top of the voting list 27.
So Senate Bill 8, General Provisions, State Song Repeal. This is sponsored by Senator Kagan. This bill repeals the Maryland State Song, which is currently titled Maryland, My Maryland. There was opposition at the hearing, and there are no amendments to the bill.
Motion on the bill. It's been moved. It's been seconded. There are no amendments. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will anybody be voting against it? This will be marked as 11-0 and sent to the floor. There is a House bill already over, I think. Delegate Semple Hughes, I know this is a high priority for the Speaker and a number of other people as well. So we'll be seeing the House version soon. Okay, let's go to the next list. Let's get down to 300. Let's go to 300.
Senate Bill 300, Special Education Learning Continuity Plan Requirement. This bill requires, beginning October 1, 2021, an individualized education program to include a learning continuity plan to be implemented during emergency conditions, which is defined as 10 or more school days during which a child with a disability cannot be provided with an IEP or special education services in person or at school because of specified conditions. The learning plan must be developed by an IEP team at specified times, must be periodically updated, and must describe the methods through which the IEP services will be provided to a child with a disability. A learning continuity plan must include specified provisions, if applicable, to ensure that the child receives required services in accordance with the child's IEP. Also beginning on October 1, 2021, for each student who has a 504 plan and does not have an IEP, a local school system must develop a learning learning continuity plan.
Let me interrupt. I want to thank Ms. Foxworth for all the work she did on the cyber stuff. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. So there's one amendment starting on page 19 of your packet with a reprint starting on page 22. So this amendment mostly conforms the bill to the version passed by the House. This revises the definition of emergency conditions to 10 days of school during which a child with a disability cannot be provided with an IEP or special education services at school, and the school is providing instructions to students in some form, and removes the very specified conditions. This strikes the provisions specifying what must be included in the learning continuity plan, requires an IEP team to make a reasonable attempt to notify parents or guardians that a learning continuity plan is in place within 10 days of determining that the emergency conditions exist. It strikes the provisions making these requirements applicable to students with 504 plans, and there's language in the bill that provides how an IEP team with IEPs in place during the 2020-21 school year may fulfill the requirements enacted by this act. There was opposition at the hearing, and there is a large fiscal impact that the House believes has been mitigated by these amendments.
Yeah, before I ask for a motion, the original version of the bill was a pretty big lift, which would have called for school systems and special ed teams to do a lot, which they didn't feel they could actually accomplish. A lot of the advocates got together and trimmed back their ask and collapsed and consolidated the regular IEP and the emergency IEP. There was some talk of having to do it twice, which takes a lot of time. So I think the bill in this posture is a lot cheaper and a lot more streamlined. And I think even the school systems I think they've dropped their opposition.
They're okay with it, yeah.
Okay, the PZAM and MABE, we think, can live with this, whereas originally they couldn't. Okay, is there a motion on the bill? It's moved. It's been seconded. Discussion. Should we adopt the amendments, or you want to talk to it right now, Senator Washington?
I just had a question.
Sure.
Do the amendments, there's a pretty strong letter of opposition from the Education Advocacy Coalition, and when I see, so those are, they're not random groups. They're very much people who we regard pretty highly. So have they commented on the amendments? Because they were concerned about disillusionment, the problem with the implementation. So
any of the groups per se. I did talk with a rep from PSAM who saw the amendments, and like I said, they said they're much more livable at this point.
well, this would be Disability Rights Maryland in particular. There's an autism organization. Well, this says, hopefully I'm looking at the right bill. It says oppose. Yeah, SB 30. Yeah.
This is 300.
Yeah, 300, sorry, SB 300. There's a letter of opposition from the Education Advocacy Coalition for Students with Disabilities.
Are these all from the original public testimony?
Yeah, that's why I wondered if do the amendments address these?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you read their testimony, it's extremely reasonable. They say, that even if this were in place, when you can't visit the child, it's very difficult to implement, which I think everyone understands. They also, there's some things that if there's a transportation strike, you just have to get the child to school in another way. So I think they felt the bill went too far, actually, and the bill trims it back. So, again, I haven't talked to them, Senator.
So I think part of this especially were with the contingencies on page 4 of the reprint, when you talked about a fire, a flood, an earthquake, an impassable roads, a pandemic, an imminent hazard determined by local law. I mean, trying to plan for each of those contingencies and how you would proceed under each of those circumstances was a huge heavy lift. And I think that's why most of the meat of the bill, as it were kind of taken out, because trying to plan for each of those contingencies would be almost impossible.
Okay. So the bill has been moved and seconded. The sponsor amendments, right?
No, that was your amendment.
The House amendment. Okay. This conforms it.
Except for, there's only one difference now, is that in the House amendments, on page, what's 27 in your packet, in that paragraph 4, they left in that provision about they shall consider any risks associated with the methods, and it just didn't seem to fit now that you weren't planning for particular contingencies. So that was removed in the Senate version of the bill. And then on page 30, there's a slight word change in the section 2 language where they said that the education program was in existence. That was changed to in effect. So
the amendment is the House amendments with 2 minor changes. So essentially it conforms it with 2 minor, I don't know if I want to call them technical or not, but they're pretty close. So any objection to adopting the amendments? It is very scaled down from how it was introduced. Seeing no objection, the bill as amended is before you and open for discussion or debate. Seeing none, will anybody want to be recorded as negative? Okay, that'll be recorded as 11-0 and sent to the floor. Let's go to 430. Let's go to 438.
okay. Senate Bill 438. Public schools, pregnant and parenting students, policies and reports. This bill requires the Maryland State Department of Education to develop a model policy with specified elements to support the educational and parenting goals and improve the educational outcomes of pregnant and parenting students. Each local board of education must establish a local policy based on the model policy. The department must provide technical assistance to a local board to establish the policies. In addition, the bill requires each full local board of education to excuse any parenting-related absence from a class due to the use of a lactation space or to nurse or express breast milk. There is one amendment from Senator Washington that's on page 31 of your packet and a reprint beginning on page 33. This amendment revises the definition of parenting student. It revises the lactation space requirements to require them only in high schools instead of each school, and requires lactating students to have access to a refrigerator reasonably close to the lactation space. It also requires a school to designate at least one staff member to connect PEP students to the extent practicable with finding resources to find the specified care and transportation, and provides that nothing in this act may be construed to require a school to construct an addition or new space to a school building to provide the lactation space.
People have a motion on the bill itself? Moved and seconded. Any objection to the amendments? I think Senator Washington is fine with them. She helped shape them. Any objection to the amendments being added? They're added. So the bill as amended is before you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, would anyone like to be recorded in the negative on the bill? Seeing nothing, no lights, so recorded. Let's go back to 405.
Senate Bill 405, Higher Education, Student Identification Cards, Required Information. This bill requires institutions of higher education to provide the telephone number for Maryland's helpline directly on student identification cards or a sticker affixed to the card, if the institution provides such a card. Additionally, the bill permits institutions to provide numbers for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Crisis Text Line, or an on-campus crisis center on student identification cards. The bill does not require institutions to reissue or reprint student identification cards in use on the effective date of the bill, or to reprint cards that were printed but not issued before the effective date of the bill. There are two amendments in your packets, and they do two different things. There was no opposition at the hearing. So on page 7 is the sponsor amendment from Senator Augustine, and on page 6 is one from Senator Pinsky. You're going to withdraw? Okay. So on page 7 is a sponsor amendment from Senator Augustine, and this would conform the bill to the version passed by the House. And what this amendment does is authorize the institution to provide a telephone number for the on-campus crisis center that operates all day and all year as an alternative to Maryland's helpline on the student ID card, and adds the National Domestic Violence Hotline or any on-campus crisis center to the numbers that the institution may also include on the card.
It's been moved and seconded. The sponsor amendment conforms it to the House version. Any objection? Discussion, debate? Senator.
It's just a couple questions or discussion. So the students, or most of them, they carry these cards all the time with them? I mean, is that at every school? And then that would be the first question. The second question would be, on these cards, I mean, how much information is on there already, and how much room is there really for all this stuff? I mean, is it just a couple lines and the print? I mean, it's just in real small print, or I mean, my question is, will this really? I mean, I like the idea, but will it really make a difference? That's my question.
But I can say that it is my understanding that institutions are actually moving away from the student identification cards to a different method. Most student ID cards are probably about the size of a driver's license. So there's only one number that's required. The other ones are, I don't know, enabling, authorized, suggested, encouraged.
Senator, the bill only says the one line has to be included, and it can be a sticker. So they'll have to find some open space on the card. But as Ms. Goodman said, in 3 years they might all move to apps, so it becomes a different discussion.
Okay.
I think my understanding is the colleges and universities weren't really excited, but they're not going to war on it. I don't know, is that sort of fair characterization? Senator Ellis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The thing about Senator Gallian's question, I look at like 4 ID cards I have in my wallet. I mean, Senate ID, military ID, driver's license, all of them have space on it for empty space. So I know, thinking back to college IDs, they have even more space than driver's license and these other IDs. So I don't think space is a problem to get this information on, which I fully support this bill. When a student is in crisis for any reason, it's really sometimes hard to go hunt down these numbers. So I think this will be a good bill. Thank you.
Bill's amendment is before us. Would anyone like to be recorded in the negative on the favorable? I see no hands, no lights. Will be recorded as 11-0 on 4-5. 446.
Senate Bill 446, Department of the Environment Supplemental Environmental Projects Database. This bill defines a supplemental environmental project, or SEP, and requires the Maryland Department of the Environment to create and maintain a database of SEPs from which a person who violates the environment article may choose to undertake. MDE must solicit input from communities in the state that are impacted by environmental justice concerns when creating and maintaining the database. MDE must ensure that the scope and cost of a chosen project is commensurate with the scope and cost of a violation before a violator undertakes a SEP. There are no amendments, but I would note that the Department of the Environment did request in its letter of information that language regarding cost be amended out of the bill, because they said it's not, it doesn't really work with the way they currently do SEPs.
Where in the bill is that, Ms. Morton?
So right now, the bill says that in creating before a violator undertakes a supplemental environmental project, the department shall ensure that the scope and cost of the chosen project is commensurate with the scope and cost of the violation. The way it works right now is they might come up with a SEP, and then depending on what the cost of that is, the violator might actually be required to pay an additional penalty on top of it, or sometimes it's possible that they could also come up with a SEP that's more expensive than the penalty would be, and they don't want to sort of cut that out of the possibility.
So if we take out the cost and leave in scope, does that achieve what the sponsor wants and also the department?
It would achieve what the department wants. I haven't spoken to the sponsor, but it
Right.
should. I mean, I think the idea there was just to make sure that, they're not letting them get away with something that's less.
Right, but it could go up or down. In other words, if we can believe the department, they're saying they might want to exceed the cost.
Sure.
I believe the sponsor was probably concerned they'd lowball it below the cost. Discussion. Yep.
One thing I've worked on over the years, and I think I got it over last year or the year before, was SEPs. And I don't know if it would be with the will of the committee. I always thought it was appropriate that the area that got affected by the violation would be the one that would be the recipient of the cleanup or whatever, as much as they could. So I don't know if we could put something in there, keep the language, but something to the effect with priority given to projects in the proximity of the violation. In other words, something happens in Anne Arundel County, and they say, okay, we got a great SEP up in Harford County, let's do that. Just, if they had the violation in a certain area, and I wouldn't say they have to do it, but if they could give it priority, I think that would be more beneficial to the area that got violated.
I assume that's a proffered amendment, and I assume there's a second discussion. Senator Riley. Anybody object? Any legal reason why not? Seeing no objection, and hopefully people are still conscious and awake. Okay, the amendment's adopted. Let's get back to the original question of cost. If we said at least the cost?
So, again, I mean, the one thing that the department sort of pointed out was it is possible to have sort of a SEP, have the SEP, but also have a penalty. So their argument is that they would eventually kind of get up to the cost anyway, but.
Again, how about if we said the scope and cost or any penalties must be at least, or, I don't know. I mean, My guess is that the sponsor wanted to make sure that they didn't just do a slap on the wrist on this, number one. And number two, knowing the department, that's what happens a lot. So,
I mean, if that's the feeling, I would suggest just leaving it as is. I don't know.
okay. Bill's amended with the Simon Air amendment. Discussion? Debate? Yes, Senator Ellis.
Could you please, Council, read the amendment where it fits into the bill? The Simon Air amendment, please.
It would say before a violator undertakes a supplemental environmental project, the department shall, 1, ensure that the scope and cost of the chosen project is commensurate with the scope and cost of the violation, and 2, give priority to SEPs in the geographic area of the violation or something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect.
Amended is before us. Will anybody like to be recorded in the negative? I see no lights. 446 passes as amended to the floor, unanimous. We did that. 453.
Senate Bill 453, Allegheny County and Garrett County Archery Hunting and Safety Zone. This bill decreases the archery hunting safety zone in Allegheny and Garrett County from 150 yards to 50 yards from a dwelling house, residence, church, or any other building or camp occupied by human beings. There are no amendments. We do have a local letter. Senate Bill 649, Procurement, Department of General Services, MBE Program Compliance Officer. This is one that was held from the last voting session. This is one that, as introduced, would have required the Secretary of General Services, in consultation with the Chief Procurement Officer, to appoint a Minority Business Enterprise Program Compliance Officer in the Office of State Procurement. The amendment would eliminate that requirement and instead strengthen the MBE oversight responsibilities of the Governor's Office of Minority Small Business Affairs. Specifically, the amendment requires procurement units to make a good faith effort to solicit at least one bid from an MBE for certain categories of small procurements. That's on page 38 of the voting packet. Requires units to require prospective contractors to attend a pre-bid or proposal meeting as a prerequisite to submitting a bid or proposal for a procurement by the unit, and to share the contact information of prospective contractors with other meeting attendees. That's on page 39. And most significantly, would require the Governor's Office of Small and Minority and Small Business Affairs to review MBE participation goals and sub-goals for procurement contracts with a value of $1 million or more before those contracts are finalized, and make recommendations on alternate goals and sub-goals, or on how the contract could be unbundled to facilitate MBE participation. It's on page 40 of the voting packet. Finally, the amendments alter current reporting requirements to include, among other things, contracts reviewed by the office, contracts for which no MBE participation goals were established, contractors that failed to meet MBE participation goals or sub-goals, MBE participation in emergency, expedited, and sole source procurement contracts, and each unit's attainment or non-attainment of MBE goals over a 5-year period. All of these provisions have a delayed effective date of July 1st, 2022, contingent on the extension of the MBE program by the General Assembly. Finally, the amendment requires the Department of Legislative Services to review and report on implementation of the MBE program as specified. That's on page 20 of the voting packet.
Let's If we're going to move the bill, let's move it. It's been moved by Senator Washington, seconded by Senator Riley. There's a large number of amendments that Ms. Morton just walked through, and I think supported by the sponsor and after conversations with other stakeholders. Any objection to the amendments? Any? Okay.
So, was the amendment offered to take out the requirement for the program compliance officer? Did I hear that correctly?
Right, so the amendments essentially strike the original bill. The reason for that is that, you know, the bill proposed creating that position in the Department of General Services, but right now that position essentially exists. There's this sort of a whole office to kind of do the things that were outlined in the bill for that position within the Governor's Office of Minority and Small Business Affairs. So if you recall at the bill hearing, the bill sponsor, Senator Griffith, sort of acknowledged that her intent was not to duplicate what's already been done, but to sort of beef it up and give the governor's office more oversight, particularly at the early stages of contract formation when they're actually coming up with those MBE participation goals on these large $1 million plus contracts.
Right. So who offered that amendment to take out? Is that the sponsor? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any objection to the sponsor amendments? Seeing none, they're adopted. The bill is amended. The floor is open for discussion. Seeing no red lights, would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? You want to speak, Senator?
Question, please. Where did the non-attainment of the overall percentage goal, who is that reported to?
So this, let me pull up the actual. And there is a reprint in your packet as well. So this is part of an existing report that the Governor's Office of Small Business Affairs already does annually on the MBE program. The idea with this is they already look at, so it gets a little muddled when you start talking about goals within this program, because on the one hand, each agency, each procurement unit has sort of a broad goal for the percentage of total contract dollars that agency procures, which percentage should go to minority business enterprises. And that's set by the Office of Minority Business Affairs. So that's that attainment, non-attainment. Right now, I think it's essentially reported on an annual basis. Like this year, these particular procurement units met their goals, these ones didn't. What the sponsor is looking for, though, would be in the report, sort of a look back, how have they performed over the past 5 years, so that you don't have to go to each individual report, and so you can sort of get a snapshot of this agency has consistently been missing it, or this agency has consistently exceeded it, et cetera.
Supported this bill. The only thing I had wondered about, because I've actually looked at this report before, is whether or not perhaps at the annual budget hearing, the agencies should each present how well they've done on this particular goal. But it was just a thought.
I think that's something you should suggest to Senator Griffith, who's on budget and tax, so they come before her. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question was similar to that of Senator Hester. I mean, how do you measure these end results? I mean, I know there are goals, so you can't use quotas and all that kind of stuff. So, April, I think you made reference to a good faith effort. That seemed to have been language that's been used for 20 years, and we still at the same point of not knowing just what really got done. I mean, is it any way to measure the performance of these missed opportunities?
What the bill is getting at. I mean, we do already measure sort of the attainment, non-attainment. So how have these departments been doing at, meeting or missing their goals? Some of what the bill is trying to do is have some of that feedback happen earlier in the contracting process. So, and then this is again where I said there's sort of these different levels of goals. You have this sort of department or procurement level goal that says, this is the goal for you, particular agency, for the percentage of your contracting dollars that should be going to MBEs. The way that sort of gets implemented in practice is often through, so you'll be putting together your request for proposals or whatever for the contract, and they'll sort of based off of, they're supposed to, based off of various factors, including, how many MBEs are sort of in this particular area, contracting area, what is a realistic goal for this contract, and then that actually goes into the request for proposals or whatever gets posted on email and Marketplace. The goal of this bill is to have the governor's office look at that goal, before you get to because once you get to the point where you have your contractor, that's when they sit down and they hash out with the contractor, all right, how are you going to, through your subcontracting, get us to this goal that we've set for this contract. And that's where you get into waivers and things where the contractor said, we really tried, but we couldn't do it. The idea of this amendments to this bill are to have the governor's office, the small and minority business affairs, that have the specialists that work in this area, work with the particular procurement officer that's doing the contract at the front end to say, here's what these goals really should be, or in the case, one of the arguments is you tend to get more minority participation in smaller contracts just because of the scale of a lot of the MBEs. So another thing this bill would have them do is review these $1 million contracts and look for opportunities to maybe piece off some of that, unbundle some of that larger contract to make it more competitive for MBEs. So that's a long answer, complicated answer to the short, straightforward question, but it's a complicated issue.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that this does move the ball, I think, very much forward, just as a baseline to be able to move on and do more work. So this bill is not the end, but the beginning. In particular, I just wanted to draw attention and just make sure I'm understanding the Section 2 where it's further interacted, where it has legislative services conducting a review. So the legislative service is going to conduct a review of all of these structural barriers, essentially, and report out. So is that correct, how I'm reading this Section 2, that it's requiring that there be a real analysis of all of these items that the group, I guess, over the summer has identified around procurement?
Specifically that legislative services is supposed to do a review of this.
And
right?
then my other question, and making sure I understand in terms of Senator Hester's about who gets reported to. This is on the amendment page, but it's 9 of 11 on amendments, and B. And it says on December 31st of each year, this report is going to the Legislative Policy Committee. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And it says a report summarizing the information from the office receives under subsection A.
That's correct.
Okay,
right.
so it's the Legislative Policy Committee that will get this report and then could take action.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just want to affirm in my mind what you just said, Senator Washington. I think it does move the ball. Look, this is a difficult issue. They haven't reached it. We don't have explicit set-asides or quotas like the senator said, but this is fairly concrete, and it'll help us get our arms around it. So I think you hit it. We're spot on, Senator. Okay. Did we adopt the amendments? Any objection to the amendments? Seeing none, the bill is amended. Discussion. Would anybody like to be recorded in the negative on 649? Saying not, this will go to the floor unanimous. Okay, we're getting there, folks. 658.
Senate Bill 658, Maryland Department of Emergency Management, Establishment and Transfer of Maryland 911 Board. This bill establishes the Maryland Department of Emergency Management as a principal department of the executive branch of state government and as the successor of the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. All duties and responsibilities associated with MEMA's existing functions continue under the new department. The bill also transfers the Maryland 911 Board from the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to the new department. Employees transferred under the bill are transferred without any change in pay and retain all rights, status, and merit system and retirement status they may have on the date of transfer. The bill also makes a series of conforming changes. There is an amendment in your voting packet on page 57. This is amendment number 824335/1 from Senator Kagan. The amendment clarifies that uncodified protections for employees transferred to the new department as a result of the bill apply to employees of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services that are staffing the 911 board, as well as to employees of MEMA. There's another amendment, but I believe Senator Gallian's not actually offering that specific one, but I believe there has been discussion of renaming the new agency to be the Maryland Department of Emergency Preparedness rather than the Department of Emergency Management.
Let's get the bill in front of us. It moved, seconded. The Kagan amendment on 57, protecting transfer rights and maintaining the rights they had. Any objection to that on 57? Seeing none, that's adopted. Senator Guy, you're not moving 58. Do you have another amendment?
That's correct. I'm not going to. So I spoke with the bill sponsor on both sides. I'm not real happy with the new name, but I don't want to see the bill be held up because I think this is something important to have at the cabinet, at the cabinet level. So I kind of just defer to the two bill sponsors on the name.
Thank you, Senator. And to be honest with you, I think they're still going to call it MEMA. So I think you're concerned. Right. Okay.
If I
bill,
could just briefly, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I will be very brief. I'm going to channel my Senator Carrozza here. I just want to give a special shout out to Senator Riley and to Senator Jackson, as well as Delegate Krebs. This bill in particular has been 3 years in the making, trying to figure out where to move the 911 board and keep it autonomous, but get it out from under the prison guards, get MEMA out from under the military department. Neither one were in the right place, and this bill's really important. And it took 3 years to get unanimous through the Next Gen 911 Commission. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Seeing no lights or hands. Would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? Seeing none, this will be recorded as unanimous and sent to the floor. That's 658. 767 is next.
Senate Bill 767, Higher Education Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program established. This bill establishes the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program for public institutions of higher education administered by the Maryland Higher Education Commission. The Commission must allocate grant funding to any public institution that pledges a matching contribution to be used to implement the goals of the program and is designated as a hunger-free campus according to the standards set in the bill. Beginning in fiscal 2023, the governor must include $150,000 annually in the budget for the program. MHEC must incorporate a plan for addressing any basic needs in security of higher education students in the 2026-2030 State Plan for Higher Education. Within 2 years after establishing the program, MHEC must report on the implementation of the bill as specified. There are no amendments and no opposition at the hearing.
Amendments, discussion on the bill before us. Senator.
Washington, you talk about the grant funding. So the grant funding on the one side is the governor's money. The grant funding on the other side is the institution's money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions or discussion on 767? Seeing none, would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? Seeing no hands, that too will be recorded as unanimous and go to the floor. Okay, we have two bills left. 245 is not ready. The amendments are not ready yet. We will come back to that in the next few days. So let's go to SB 205. Do people have the amendment? Ian, would you help, please?
So Senate Bill 205, alcoholic beverages, sale or delivery for off-premises consumption. This bill authorizes restaurants, bars, and taverns to sell and deliver certain alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption or delivery as specified. A local licensing board may not charge an additional fee to an alcoholic beverages license holder for selling or delivering alcoholic beverages under the bill. So there are sort of three sets of amendments out here for this bill. The first is from the bill sponsor, Senator Heddleman, on page 2 of the voting packet. This is amendment number 493226/1. This amendment clarifies that mixed drink, and these provisions are in all three sets of amendments. So it clarifies the mixed drink authorization, clarifies that a person delivering alcoholic beverages must be at least 21 years old, authorizes a local licensing board to limit the quantity of alcoholic beverages that may be sold or delivered under the bill in a single transaction. And then here's one major difference. So Senator Heddleman's amendments provide for the bill to take effect on the later of June 1st, 2021, or on the expiration of the governor's executive order, and to terminate 36 months, so that's 3 years, after the bill's effective date. The House amendments are also in your bill packet on page 4. They're identical to Senator Heddleman's amendments, except under the House amendments, the bill takes effect July 1st, 2021, and sunsets after 2 years on June 30th, 2023. The amendments being offered by Senator Pinsky, which were just passed around, include all the provisions from the House amendments and the Heddleman amendments. They include the House offer of the 2-year sunset. So under Senator Pinsky's amendments, the bill would take effect July 1st, 2021 and sunset after 2 years on June 30th, 2023. Additionally, the amendments would leave it up to the counties to decide whether or not to allow restaurants, bars, and taverns within their jurisdiction to sell alcohol for off-premises consumption or delivery in accordance with the bill. A county would have to adopt a local law or ordinance implementing the bill's provisions and could impose additional restrictions, including restrictions on the quantity of alcohol that could be provided in a single transaction. A local law or ordinance adopted under the bill would also terminate on June 30th, 2023.
Let me explain what's happening here. We had the bill with the House amendments the other night, or whenever. It all runs together. And they'd agreed to 2 years. Then that day, Senator Heddleman wanted to have 3 years to give more time for recovery for the restaurants, et cetera. The amendment before you is spurred apparently by at least one member of the Baltimore City delegation that says in some parts of the city it's been like Mardi Gras and totally uncontrollable, and a lot of civic associations are up in arms. And not only is alcohol flowing in some areas, Fells Point and a few other neighborhoods as well, but some people are buying it from the restaurants and then selling it from their trunks, apparently. So people are up in arms, at least according to this one fairly well-positioned member of the Baltimore City delegation. And he has suggested an approach that would let Baltimore City and other jurisdictions fine-tune this policy. So that's sort of the genesis for this. I'm going to be very frank with you, I have some reservations, because I was concerned the 24 jurisdictions, the local governments are going to be lobbied by the restaurants versus the distributors and the package stores, et cetera. So tried to come up with a plan that would make sense. So my thought was, given what was said, we should still have a framework here, and if a county didn't want to do their own thing, they could just accept the framework that we put in place. And it's a 2-year framework. So essentially, local governments can set their own policy or they can buy into the framework. And then in 2 years, in any case, it sunsets. So that's what my amendments do. So we've got the House amendments, the Hedelman amendment, which is the House amendments plus a year, or the Pinsky amendments that leave authority to the local jurisdictions if they choose to use it. So let me stop there. Senator Washington.
So I share that concern, but not just for Baltimore, but just any other. I mean, I think I would think about Ocean City and a number of places. But I think that giving a local authority, so I like the Pinsky Amendment, but I just want to understand that it is a opt-in opportunity, so it gives them an opportunity to opt into the state framework, or is it an opt-out? Okay, good, okay, yeah. Right.
Emit the state framework
So,
additionally.
yeah, that's good, that's easier. So, so I would support I would second the Pinsky amendments that allow that framework and incorporates the House amendments, yeah.
More as well. Senator Hester, followed by Senator Carrozza.
I have just, thank you. I have 2 questions. First of all, did you say something about like selling the food and the alcohol in the back of their trucks?
I heard one report today where, because under the executive order, you can buy, say, 5 cases from a restaurant. And there's not a strict accounting, essentially. So in other words, I buy 5 cases, and it's an area where there's outdoor dining and people sort of walking around drinking, and there have been reports, and this is secondhand, or maybe third, I don't know, where, it's against the law, but how can they prove where they got it, when they got it?
So I'm sympathetic to the issue. My question is, why couldn't they just go to a liquor store and buy the 5 cases of beer and sell it out of the trunk?
Well, I guess they could.
So the only difference is you're selling it with food, which I think is, I mean, it's still legal either way, right?
No. Senator Washington probably has a better handle on this than I do, because so far I've heard it more from Baltimore, and some of the city council members are upset, and there's...
I did have a second question also.
Okay.
But if somebody can answer the first.
No, look,
Okay.
look, the restaurants, I think you have to buy food, but say you buy a hamburger and you buy 5 cases.
Right.
And then you've got 5 cases and you want to sell it retail and not have a package store, you become a retailer. That's only one of the problems. Apparently it's just the Mardi Gras type atmosphere many neighborhoods in Baltimore. And they don't feel just setting this policy statewide would give them the authority to rein things in.
Okay, like I said, I'm sympathetic to the cause. I'm just trying to understand how it relates to the restaurants. But the second question is the opt-in framework. Is that in your amendment, or is that the original bill? Where's the opt-in framework?
Amendment. So if you look, so if you go to the reprint, so like page 2 of 4, so at the top, like line 6, that's the exemption that the bill had been creating to the general prohibition on the delivery of alcoholic beverages for off-sale consumption by these restaurants. And so it had said in accordance with section 4-1107, now it says in accordance with a local law or ordinance adopted under this section. So it would have to be in accordance, the local jurisdiction would have to adopt a law first. So if you go down then further to line 13, a county may adopt a local law or ordinance that allows restaurants, bars, or taverns to sell alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption in accordance with this section. And then that language is repeated a number of times. So language 17, a local law or ordinance may authorize a license holder under this section to sell blah, 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 blah.
Thing, Senator. I wanted to put the language of what the agreement had been in the House here. I didn't just want to say every local do whatever you want to do. I wanted to give them a framework which most of the parties had agreed on, which is basically the executive order. And then on middle of that page, after line 13, number 2, I threw in some language there to say, you know, we encourage you to strike a balance between recovery from the COVID-19 and also protect public health. So I did that to sort of, you know, so it wasn't to destroy the restaurants or destroy the package stores. Personally, as I've said before, I want both to succeed. So that's 2 in the middle of the page. We'll come back to you if you have more questions. I think I had Senator Carrozza next, then the Vice Chair, then back to Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before I make a couple comments, just everything we have in front of us is we've got the House amendments, which basically is basically a 2-year extension, as I understand it. The Hedelman amendments, which is a 3-year extension, and then a Pinsky amendment, which is an opt-in for local jurisdictions that would take it, and if they opt in, it would be a 2-year extension. Okay.
Choose to do their own thing, is you're reading that it's for 2 years? Yes. Right, so this is the House amendments, total.
Right.
With saying you can either opt into this framework or you can do your own thing.
Okay. Okay, so we have the 3 amendments in front of us. As way of background, I'll just remind my colleagues that the restaurants have been extremely hard hit in COVID-19. Their original bill came in with a permanent extension. A lot of these businesses changed their model in order to survive. They're also the businesses that are still providing jobs. So then, as they negotiated through that, they came back with the different constituencies negotiating on how long the extension would be. I would like the opportunity to vote on the Hedelman Amendment. I think we should have the opportunity to vote on it so we are on record supporting our restaurants for the 3 years that they need for their long-term recovery. And if you look at the numbers, more than any other industry in Maryland, these restaurants have been hardest hit. And I just, again, this this scenario in Baltimore, is coming at the end of these long negotiations, and, I understand if, these concerns have been raised, but, to take the option away for all of Maryland restaurants to have the opportunity to survive, it seems to me that's not sensitive to their long-term recovery. So I will be supporting the Heidelman Amendment and would appreciate the opportunity to vote on it.
To make that happen, I think Vice Chair, and then I'll come back to Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have several substantive questions, and Ms. Morton, if you can help. So first off, in all of the places where it says restaurant, bar, or tavern, I just want to make sure that breweries, meaderies, and distilleries do not need to be included if they were to sell for off-premise consumption or anything. They're covered already, right?
No, that's a different bill.
That's a different bill.
Different bill. Okay, but
That's-
okay, I'm just
That's the Hester Bill, 281.
okay. Okay, so just checking. Next question. Next question, if I could. I like the local control of that each of our 24 counties can set up their own jurisdictional guidelines that work for them. What I'm a little worried about is, it's really strict in my home jurisdiction. I think I'm going to drive across county lines where I can buy more stuff. And I see where it says it shouldn't be a sippy cup, which is good, but it's not hard to take out the cork or take off the top and drink and drive. So this might be rhetorical. What I'm envisioning is a patchwork quilt of 24 jurisdictions with very widely differing levels of permissiveness.
Senator, look, I'd prefer a state approach.
Yes.
But your issue happens now. I mean, D.C. closed their package stores at 12, and in Prince George's County it was 2. So that people cross lines all the time.
Okay.
And this is restaurants. So in other words,
Right.
you can get a better deal going to the package store or Total Wine and Beer or the D.C. Costco and buy it a lot cheaper than going to a restaurant. I mean, you can get it, and they like the extra margin of selling beer and wine themselves, but I don't think people are going to run to from Rockville to Franklin's and Hyattsville to buy 4 growlers of beer. I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
Okay. 2 more things. One is the whole single transaction. So they put this might be not enforceable, but I walk in, I buy the burger that I think it was Senator Hester referenced. I buy a burger and I buy 4 growlers, to use the chairman's example, and that's one transaction. I can come back 10 minutes later, buy another burger, and buy 4 more growlers, and there's no limit on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's in the executive order now.
Okay. And then the last.
The other thing I would say is, again, this would leave more to the locals. So if they wanted to do something on that issue, they could. It specifically mentions that just because the House amendments had mentioned that in the putting it under the board's control, but because this is giving the local county council or local government more control over this scenario.
Got it.
We put it there.
My last question, Ms. Morton, I thought I heard you say 2 years or after the governor's emergency order expires. Was that in another version and not in the Pinsky version? Because I don't see that in the Pinsky version.
That was the Hellman version. Hers was 3 years after the
Okay.
expiration.
So
of
in the
government.
Pinsky version, though, it's 2
a
years,
hard date.
period, hard date.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to remind the committee that there are public health, in addition to small businesses, why I also believe we should be cautious about this and allow locals to define it, is that there are public health implications of this, and there always are. And again, I'm because of COVID, I'm willing to vote for it, but I would overall be concerned about the letters of opposition that we received from the original bill, which is about the alcohol, that mystery shoppers, they're not checking ID. Again, we have to think about our businesses that have paid tens of thousands of dollars for their liquor license and the ability to sell. And now we're introducing at a very, very low cost, again, for an intermediate time, what's the economic impact on those businesses? So, I think we've come up with a reasonable solution, which is because of COVID, have this temporary extension, and then more specifically allow the locals who are more in tune to the business mix in their neighborhood, in their communities. And I appreciate the characterization of the opposition that might be in Baltimore, but I would just extend it that there are variable situations all over the state that the locals are more inclined to. Also, we have the Garrett County Liquor Board oppose the original bill. So, and you have one that said favorable with amendments. So, there is variability in how each of the different counties want to address this. And that's why I think that we should support the amendment that incorporates the local control with the 2-year limit on it. Thank you.
Ms. Morton, could you share with us from the bill language how you define local government?
So the bill actually says a county, but that's a defined term. So county is defined to mean a county or Baltimore City.
Okay, so in Anne Arundel County, the county executive and the county council have nothing to do with alcohol. It refers back to the liquor board, Anne Arundel County Board of Liquor or License Commissioners. Would they be considered the county?
No. So this would require the county to adopt a local law or ordinance creating the framework for how this would work in their particular county.
So is there any other alcohol regulation law bill that has ever allowed counties to control alcohol? And I think I know the answer is no.
The only context that I found in my very brief review was just on public drinking. So we
Yeah, and that's fine because that's enforced by the police, etc. So I'm in favor of the Pinsky amendment, the 2 years, et cetera, but I think this is problematic. It's technical, but I think we have to find the wording to identify the governmental unit which controls alcohol regulation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator, let me respond to that, because when this was first suggested to me from a well-placed person in the Baltimore City delegation, I was thinking the local liquor boards. And they would be lobbied. And to tell you the truth, knowing some liquor boards, they have more contact with the package stores and distributors than with individual restaurants. And my concern, they would lobby the local board and say, give them no time. Because there's a balancing act here. So I spoke with Ms. Morton and I spoke with some other people, and it's probably more likely the city council or county council are going to be more sympathetic to the recovery of restaurants for their county's economy. And I don't see them doing the implementation, just authorizing to set up a policy and do the broad strokes and then give it to the liquor board. That's how I envision this. But I was concerned of the more narrow view of the local liquor boards of not taking the big picture into concern. And that was my thinking. And again, originally I was thinking a statewide policy. So anyway, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think that Senator Riley is kind of going down the same path I was going to, I was thinking with, a rabbit hole. So when I first hear about it being, talked about the local part of your amendment, I was thinking we're going to be back here next year on Alcohol Day doing it. I've never, normally the way this alcohol legislation comes up is, like the liquor board or a constituent or another local elected official comes in and say, hey, I think we should change this or whatever, and we bring it here on alcohol day. So why the change to like letting the executive or council do it? I mean, that seems like a total exact different way of doing it than what we do now.
Two things. One, nobody would come back. I mean, this is the authorizing language. No, I understand. What I'm saying is whether we give this to the local board directly or to the council and then they give it to the local board of alcohol commissioners, they're not coming back next year. This is the authorizing language. They don't have to come in to get our approval one by one. This is giving them the authorization to either do it how they want to do it as to how many bottles of wine or beer under what circumstances can be sold off premises. But they don't have to come back here. Either way. You with me? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So at the local level, if a county passes a law, can they authorize the county liquor board to do it?
In the bill, that's how it would work.
Should we clarify? It's not your answer. It's a policy question.
I'm fine with it. I mean, that was, if it's not clear enough, we can put language in.
And it is already in, so page 3 of the reprint, because of the way it's drafted, so a local law may authorize a license holder under the subsection to obtain a permit from the local licensing board. So it's already in there. It's drafted, so essentially the county would be responsible for doing authorizing legislation, and then the board would implement it.
I got to tell you, I'm hoping some counties say, I don't want to mess with it. We'll just do what's in the executive order, which is basically the framework here. And it's done. But could 1, 2, or 5, or 24 say we want to do it our own way? I guess they could. But I didn't know else how to shape it when the concern about Baltimore City and potentially Ocean City come up. But it's 2 years. So at the end of 2 years, it's done, and it's going to come back before us. So, yeah, please.
Obviously, they can do the limits as far as how much they can sell and so forth, but do they have the authority to adjust, like it can't be sold after 11 p.m.? Can they adjust that, or is that the framework of the state that they have no authority to adjust?
I would say that the parameters that are in the bill right now, that all the clauses, if the individual is at least 21 years old, et cetera, that's that would be the kind of the floor on what is acceptable. If the local jurisdiction or if the county wanted to go narrower, I think they could.
And then if it's silent in here, then the counties could go and do what they wanted if it's silent.
Right.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more point on this, and then I'll go to Senator Hester. This came up in the last 8 hours, I have to tell you. I have no idea where the House is. Neither the subcommittee chairman or I have spoken with them. They might think this is a dumb idea or a terrible idea, and we're a conference committee. So there's no guarantee here. Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our restaurants have been through a lot, and I'm sympathetic to the purpose of this amendment. I am worried that by having them opt in, it creates a certain amount of time of uncertainty. So I don't know when the executive order expires, but it expires, and then you've got to wait for your county council, and maybe yours are faster than ours, but Howard County tends to move. It takes a lot of time to consider everything. So we could be like 6 months in before they approve this going forward. And so in the meantime, our small businesses might be paying insurance on their trucks and stuff to deliver this stuff. So I'm just curious if that's been considered.
Let me ask Ms. Morton. If they take no action,
Action, they don't get to sell
Okay.
once the executive order expires.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the chair's most recent comments that we don't know where the House is on the Pinsky amendments. And what concerns me is, I mean, this is a top priority for our restaurants and small businesses. And we were negotiating back and forth on the 3 years, 2 years, and then this issue has popped in the past 8 hours, and which could jeopardize any type of support for the small businesses. So, number one,
clarify.
so,
Okay.
and then there were some questions raised. So why would we even, I mean, the whole purpose of having the state law on this is to take the emergency order, which is now allowing for the sales of the carryout and delivery, and to either to extend it for a certain period of time at the state level. And there's no other instances where county councils have had this type of authority when it comes to our liquor laws. So, we need to act at the state level, and it really should be a matter of what is that period of time? Is it an extension for 3 years? Is it an extension for 2 years? And then if it's whatever it is, we're going to come back and revisit it at that point. And I just, we're talking about giving the localities authorities that they've never had in the area of alcohol law.
Let me just clarify one point. Senator, there's small businesses on both sides of this issue. The negotiations in the House were between the small package stores on one side and restaurants on the other. So there's not just small businesses on one side of this issue. There's small business on both sides of the issue that think, their ox is going to be gored. So I don't think we're saying vote for this because it's supporting small business, because you can make the same justification on the other side. That's all. We are going to take up the 2 year versus 3 year. I promised I would, Senator, so we will. Okay, on the Pinsky Amendment, we're going to do that first and vote it up or down. If it gets adopted, we'll be open to amendment of making the 2 year 3 year. So we will have a vote on that, Senator. Look, this is not a perfect situation. It got dropped in my lap this morning, so I'm just trying to work it out. Okay, on the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a little clarification, the it's as an opt-out for the locals now? Opt-in. So why wouldn't it be an opt-out? Wouldn't that be easier for them and make it simpler? Or what's that?
I don't know.
I think maybe the opt-out would be maybe simplify things a little bit. That way the onus is on them if they don't like it, right, to get out.
If you think it's the right way, vote yes. I don't know what else to tell folks. I don't want to drag this on a whole lot longer. Look, it might be back in front of us in a week or two. We don't know what the House is going to do. So the motion is adopting the Pinsky quote-unquote amendments. Those that support those amendments signify by raising your hand. 8. Those opposed? 1. They're adopted. Now let's deal with the Carrozza amendment. The Carrozza amendment is to change 2 years to 3 years. Discussion? Senator?
I'll be voting against it as much as I love Ocean City and I love my fellow senator. January of 22 and January of 23, we'll be here. If things are working well or when things are working bad, we can change it. And I think 2 years is reasonable, and we have opportunities in between. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment to go to 3 years, raise your hand. Opposed? Amendment dies. Other amendment?
Changing that to the opt-out, would that be allowed as an amendment to that amendment?
Yes. In front of us.
Okay, so I'd like to offer that. No takers here. That didn't go far. Sorry.
So that amendment's on the floor. No, it's totally fine. So the bill's amended. We've accepted one amendment, rejected another. Another has been offered. We'll put it on the list tomorrow. I've got to do a little homework, and we all can do a little homework. I'm sorry, we've made progress. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it tomorrow. We'll start with that amendment and vote it up or down, and then my likelihood is we'll vote the bill. Okay? Tomorrow we have 4 or 5 holds from today. You will get a list tomorrow morning for additional bills. We have more. We're going to keep rocking and rolling to try to clear the decks. Okay, any questions?
We'll start after this floor session.
No, we couldn't. I couldn't reschedule tomorrow's, but today went pretty quick. Today went pretty quickly. Tomorrow we start at 10:30, not 11. We have 4 of our own calendars tomorrow. I mean, there are I think 18, 19, 20 in alcohol bills. So we've got a big piece of it tomorrow, including a couple, the Kramer election bill. So, what's that? Yeah, Senator.
Senate Bill 821 a couple times, and that's a really important piece of economic development as well. Just hoping we could get that come up sometime soon. It's the breweries and distilleries, and I've got a distiller in my district who switched completely to hand sanitizer. So, I'd really like to get us back when you get mine.
I'm trying to keep in touch with what the House is doing, and they've been sitting on it for 10 days. So I was trying to work something out behind the scenes to get the parties together. I don't know where we are, but I'm hoping we can get somewhere. Okay, look, we did good work. We got through a lot of bills. I want to thank everybody for their doing floor reports. No one's let me down. Everyone's done great. I would want to suggest one thing. Sometimes Senator Riley starts with a context. He said, this bill's about blank. And you might want to think about doing that when you read your reports. So you give context. I mean, it's fine to read the descriptor, the narrative for the bill, but it's also okay to just say what the bill's about in your own words. But you're all doing great. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.